Damn it! What the hell is this place? Suze jolted upright in one sharp motion. Beneath him lay rough, dirt ground thick with briny damp moisture. He swept his gaze across his surroundings, his pupils blowing wide. This was a floating islet barely 10 meters across. Beyond its edges churned billowing gray-white sea of clouds, bottomless and endless. A rickety, wind-leaking wooden hut stood alone at the island's center. Other than that, only a tattered bamboo fishing rod rested within his reach. A stabbing pain shot through his mind as a flood of massive information forced its way into his neural pathways. 7 billion people across the globe had all been transported collectively to this mysterious realm known as the Sea of Clouds Floating Isles. Everyone started with exactly the same setup: a 10-meter islet, a ramshackle hut, and a single fishing rod. To survive, they had no choice but to use this rod to fish supplies out of the cloud layers. You've got to be kidding me, fish supplies from clouds? Suze grabbed the rod. Its bamboo shaft was crisscrossed with cracks, the fishing line twisted from unidentifiable plant fibers, and the hook plain iron wire. A translucent light screen glimmered faintly in the bottom right corner of his vision. With a flick of his thought, the screen unfurled to display several options: chat channel, trading post, personal profile. He tapped chat channel, which split into world, national, city, and district subchannels. The first three were grayed out and locked. Only the district channel was illuminated. The moment he entered, dense lines of text scrolled frantically. The top right corner showed the current district population, 10,000/10,000. Anyone there? Somebody save me. I'm terrified of heights. There's no end to the clouds below. I'm losing my mind. What on earth happened? I was in an office meeting a second ago. How did I end up on this garbage island? I'm starving to death. Does anyone have food? I'll pay 100,000 for a loaf of bread. No, 1,000,000. Transfer the money right away if you feed me. Quit daydreaming up there. Money's worthless trash here. Haven't you read the rules? We can only fish for supplies. I fished for half an hour and only hauled up a broken shoe. I struck out too. Not a single thing in these clouds. Are we just gonna starve to death? Suze closed the chat interface. Each person could only send 10 messages in the channel per day. He had to save every word for critical moments. His stomach rumbled hollowly, a sharp reminder that complaining was useless. He needed to start fishing immediately, or he wouldn't last the day. He walked to the island's edge and leaned forward to peer down. The gray-white cloud sea flowed sluggishly, shadowy shapes faintly darting deep within the mist. Suze cast the bamboo rod. The iron hook, baited with a scrap of what he'd picked up beside the hut, sank into the cloud expanse. Minutes ticked by. The blistering sun hung overhead, turning the shelterless islet into a steaming furnace. Sweat dripped down his forehead, vanishing the instant it hit the parched earth. Suze licked his cracked lips, white-knuckling the rod so hard his knuckles blanched. 3 full hours passed without the float so much as twitching. Hunger and thirst gnawed at him, making his vision swim. Wails grew louder in the district channel. Out of 10,000 people, only a mere dozen had caught anything, mostly lumber and rags. A few even reeled in toxic cloud mist, left half dead from the poison. Ha! I fished up a bottle of mineral water. A message suddenly popped up in the channel, sent by someone named Wong Tung. Whoa, big shot, you're amazing. Can I beg a sip? My throat's burning dry. Brother Wong, I'm a live stream host. If you give me a drink, I'm yours from now on. Wong Tung replied smugly, dream on. I barely have enough for myself, but I'll trade one tiny sip for lumber, 10 planks per sip, first come first served. Suze watched the farce unfolding in the channel with cold detachment. 10 planks for a single sip of water was outright predatory exploitation. Yet trapped in this desperate situation, people would trade anything to stay alive. Just then, the rod in his hands lurched violently downward. A massive pull surged up from beneath the cloud sea, nearly yanking Suze straight off the floating island. I've got a bite. He planted his feet in a wide horse stance, leaning his whole body backward, veins bulging in his forearms as he hauled back with all his strength. The fishing line stretched taut, creaking loudly. The clouds roiled as whatever he'd hooked thrashed wildly, possessing terrifying strength. Come up here. Gritting his molars raw, Suze heaved upward with all his might. With a great splash, the cloud layers split open. A faintly glowing object arced through the air and crashed heavily onto the island's dirt. Gasping for breath, Suze focused his gaze. It was a clear plastic bottle filled with transparent liquid. Acquired. Ordinary mineral water, 500 milliliters. Before he could crack a smile, an emotionless mechanical voice echoed in his head. Ding. Supplies detected. Tenfold critical hit system bound to host. Every supply the host fishes can trigger a tenfold critical multiplier. Congratulations to host. Acquired 10 bottles of mineral water, 500 milliliters times 10 inch. Suze froze on the spot, eyes fixed rigidly on the virtual panel floating before him. A system? The legendary golden finger from web novels was real. Wild elation flooded his chest. He clenched his fist hard enough for his nails to dig into his palm, using the sharp pain to confirm this was no hallucination. The single bottle on the ground blurred for a split second, then multiplied into 10 identical bottles lined neatly across the dirt. Suze twisted open one bottle and chugged it straight down. Cool liquid slid down his throat, easing the worst of his thirst instantly. He drank half the bottle, then screwed the cap tight to save the rest. With 10 bottles of water, he'd solved his survival crisis and even gained the capital to get a head start in this world. The trading post only allows 3 trades per day. I need to maximize my gains. Suze opened the trading panel. He listed 2 bottles of mineral water and set his terms. Seller. Suze trade item. Ordinary mineral water, 500 milliliters requested goods. Lumber times 20, or thatch times 30, or food private message to inspect quality stock. 2. As soon as the listing went live, the district channel erupted. Holy hell, who's this guy? He's putting 2 full bottles of water up for trade. Wang Tung wanted 10 planks for a tiny sip earlier, and this legend only asks for 20 for a whole bottle? What a saint. Big shot, Suze. I've got 30 bundles of thatch. I've already placed an offer. Please accept. Ignoring the channel's uproar, Suze approved the trade instantly. A flash of light swallowed the 2 water bottles, and 40 planks of lumber plus 60 bundles of thatch materialized on the ground. Staring at the supplies that had appeared out of thin air, Suze smiled in satisfaction. He tapped the construction tab in the bottom right corner of his vision. The icon for his dilapidated hut glimmered, marked upgradable. Ramshackle hut, drafty on all sides, only provides minimal shelter. Upgrade cost, lumber times 20, thatch times 30. Upgrade. Suze spoke the command silently in his mind and confirmed without hesitation. At his order, 20 planks and 30 bundles of thatch dissolved into a brilliant white light that wrapped entirely around the crumbling old hut. The light lingered for a dozen seconds, accompanied by the creak and grind of wooden planks fitting together, then faded away. A brand new hut stood before Suze. Sturdy hut, fully sealed against wind and rain, shields against harsh weather, and grants a sense of safety. Furnished with one simple wooden bed. Suze pushed open the thick wooden door and stepped inside. The salty, howling sea wind that had once torn through the hut was completely blocked out. The air inside was noticeably cooler than outside. In the corner sat a plain wooden bed exuding a faint natural timber scent. It had no soft mattress, yet it was infinitely better than sleeping on rough bare dirt. This actually feels like a proper shelter. Suze flopped onto the bed and let out a long sigh of relief. But he knew rest would have to wait. His stomach roared in protest, a loud reminder that while his water shortage was fixed, he still had no food. Humans can't live without sustenance. Without food, he wouldn't last more than a few days in this hellish place. Suze stepped back outside, grabbed his tattered bamboo rod once more, and strode to the island's edge. The cloud sea remained an endless churn of murky gray, gaping like an abyss ready to swallow everything. He drew a deep breath and cast a wire hook baited with wood shavings back into the mist. Time trickled onward. The sun dipped west, slightly cooling the islet, but relentless hunger left Suze dizzy and lightheaded. 30 full minutes passed, and the float hadn't stirred so much as a ripple. Just as Suze prepared to reel in his line and check the bait, certain he'd caught nothing, a faint tremor ran up the rod. The simple float on the cloud surface plunged sharply downward, tearing a small, swirling vortex in the mist. Something's on the line. Suze's gaze sharpened. He gripped the rod firmly and hauled upward hard. This catch was far lighter than the mineral water had been, no violent tugging threatening to drag him overboard. He barely strained his arms before yanking his prize clear of the cloud sea. A dull thud echoed as a damp, dark yellow oil paper package landed on the dirt. Suze hurried over and tore the paper open. Inside lay a half-pound hard black loaf of bread, alongside a strip of dried unknown animal meat, releasing an inviting salty aroma. Acquired, low-grade black bread times 1, dried jerky times 1 inch. Before Suze could reach for the food, the cold mechanical voice resounded in his head again right on cue. Ding. Supplies detected. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations to host. Acquired low-grade black bread times 10, dried jerky times 10 inch. The oil paper packet blurred for a heartbeat. then 10 loaves of black bread and 10 strips of jerky lined up neatly at his feet. Holy crap, this is incredible. Suze couldn't hold back a crude exclamation, wild joy surging through his chest. He snatched a strip of jerky and bit into it without a second thought, chewing vigorously. The meat was tough, heavy with smoke and salt, yet to his starving self, it tasted finer than top-tier A5 Wagyu from a 3-Michelin-star restaurant. He chewed the meat, washed it down with his remaining half-bottle of mineral water, and forced half the loaf of bread down his throat. His empty stomach finally felt full, his drained stamina rapidly restoring as vitality flooded back into his body. As Suze savored his hard-earned meal, the district channel icon in the corner of his vision flashed frantically, paired with shrill system alert chimes. Frowning slightly, he opened the channel. A voice message was pinned to the very top, sent by a man named Li Chong whose profile picture showed a heavy-set man in black-rimmed glasses. Suze tapped the audio. "Help! Somebody help me! There's a monster! There's a monster under the clouds!" Li Chong's voice trembled with raw terror, layered with ragged gasps and howling wind, as if his throat would tear from screaming. I was fishing, and suddenly a tentacle covered in black scales shot out of the mist. It was enormous. It snatched my rod straight out of my hands, its strength insane. It almost dragged me right down with it. What kind of cursed place is this? I want to go home, sob, sob, sob. The audio cut off abruptly, leaving a dead static hum. The channel, previously filled with people begging for food and water, fell deathly silent. Seconds later, the chat exploded. "Whoa, tentacle monster. Don't scare me like that. I'm easily spooked. Is this real? There are actual monsters in the Cloud Sea? How are we supposed to survive? This is a death trap. We're doomed. I saw huge dark shapes gliding under the clouds earlier. I thought it was my eyes playing tricks, but that's monsters. Mom, I want to go home. I don't want to fish anymore." Wea, panic spread through the channel like a plague, everyone venting their unbridled fear. Suze stared out at the churning cloud sea, his brows drawn tight. He recalled the shadowy shapes darting deep in the mist he'd glimpsed on his first cast. This seemingly calm sea of clouds was nothing more than a massive monster den. Still, judging by Li Chong's ordeal, staying safely on the floating islet kept them out of harm's way, so long as they weren't pulled over the edge. These small islands were their only sanctuary in this bizarre world. If I want to live, I have to grow stronger. His eyes turned cold and sharp. He carefully carried the rest of his food back into the hut for storage, then picked up his fishing rod once more. The shadow of the monsters hung heavy over every survivor's heart. The chat channel overflowed with wailing and desperate curses. Many had thrown their rods away in terror, huddling inside their drafty shacks, too frightened to even glance at the cloud sea. Yet hunger and thirst were deadlier than any beast. Suze knew better. Stop fishing, and you might as well sign your own death warrant. With his tenfold critical hit system and endless supplies of food and water, he could afford to fish nonstop, pulling far ahead of everyone else. Now that others dared not cast their lines, this was the perfect chance to power level without competition. He cast the iron hook back into the cloud sea. The weight stretched on longer than ever before. The sun sank below the horizon, staining the cloud sea an eerie blood red, making it look even more sinister and dangerous. Suze held the rod steady, his gaze locked firmly on the tiny float drifting atop the mist. 1 hour passed, then 2. Darkness fell completely, the hut the only faint source of light on the islet. Suddenly, the float plummeted downward at breakneck speed. Big catch incoming. Suze planted his legs firmly, arched his back, and hauled backward with all his might. This weight dwarfed every previous catch. The fishing line hummed a shrill, strained tone, on the verge of snapping. A tremendous counterforce pulled down from beneath the clouds, yanking hard against the hook. Suze gritted his teeth, veins bulging across his forehead. "Bring it up." He stepped sharply backward, leveraging his full body weight to jerk the rod upward. Splash! A deafening crash split the mist as a heavy object soared through the air and crashed onto the dirt. Gasping for air, Suze squinted through the dim light to see what he'd reeled in. It was an ancient wooden treasure chest. Its surface was coated in moss and deep scratch marks, emanating an air of ancient mystery. A treasure chest? Suze's eyes lit up. He hurried forward and flipped open the lid. No gold or jewels lay inside, only a yellowed sheepskin parchment resting quietly at the bottom. He picked up the parchment. Acquired. Blueprint. Basic water purifier times 1 inch. Basic water purifier blueprint. Unlocks construction of a basic water purifier once learned. Crafting materials required. Lumber times 20, stone times 10, cloud filter, sand times 5. A water purifier. Suze's heart hammered wildly, his breath quickening. In these early survival days, where water was more precious than gold, whoever controlled a steady water supply held absolute power. Ding. Supplies detected. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations to host. Acquired blueprint. Basic water purifier times 10-inch. A flash of light swept over the parchment in his hand, multiplying the single sheet into a thick stack of blueprints. I've hit the jackpot. Excitement flooded Suze's face. He crushed one blueprint between his palms, and the complete knowledge to build a water purifier flooded straight into his mind. But there was a problem. He only had lumber on hand, no stones, and certainly no cloud filter sand. Time to cash in big at the trading post. Suze opened trading post without hesitation and listed 2 of the blueprints for trade. Seller, Suze trade item. Blueprint, basic water purifier times 1 requested goods. Cloud filter sand times 10, or floating island foundation stone times 1, or stone times 50 private message to negotiate stock. 2. The second the listing posted, the previously lifeless district channel exploded as if a depth charge had detonated. Whoa, 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 what am I seeing? A blueprint? Someone actually fished up a crafting blueprint. A basic water purifier? That means unlimited drinking water from now on. Absolute legend, big shot. Big shot, Suze. I'm the one who bought water from you yesterday. Please cut me a deal. I only have 20 stones, and I'm dying of thirst. What's a foundation stone? I fished up a glowing rock called Floating Island Foundation Stone earlier. Is this it? I'll trade it right away. As the crowd scrambled to offer everything they owned for the blueprints, a discordant voice cut through the chatter. It was Wong Tung. Don't fall for Suze's scam, everyone. Wong Tung spammed the channel frantically, trying to stir up doubt. Use your brains. We can barely scrounge up enough food to eat. How could he fish up such a high-tier blueprint? This is definitely a fraud. Even if the blueprint is real, just look at the materials it requires. What on earth is cloud sea filter sand? Has anyone here ever seen it? A blueprint that can't be built is nothing but waste paper. He's just trying to get something for nothing, looking to swindle the basic supplies you've all worked so hard to fish up. Don't fall for his trick. Hold on to your supplies to stay alive. Wong Tang's words instantly cooled the heads of several overexcited people in the channel. Brother Wong makes a fair point. I've never even heard of that material. Where are we supposed to find it? Exactly. What's the use of trading for a blueprint we can't build anything from? We'd be better off saving our supplies to exchange for a sip of water. Suze, come out and explain. Can this blueprint actually produce anything? Don't hide and stay silent. Suze watched Wong Tung's frantic, undignified outbursts in the chat channel and let out a cold snort, not bothering to type a reply at all. Explain something? In the face of absolute strength, explanations are utterly meaningless. He only needed to slap the looks off these fools' faces with cold hard facts. Against Wong Tung's slander and the doubts of some people in the channel, Suze felt completely unruffled. He even wanted to laugh. A bunch of idiots, doomed to struggle at the bottom forever. Suze closed the chat channel outright. Right then, a crisp system chime rang out from the trading zone. Though Wong Tung was stirring up trouble in the channel, there were still sharp people who recognized the blueprint's value, as well as lucky survivors who'd fished up rare materials. Ding. Trade successful. Consumed 1x primary water purifier blueprint. Obtained 10x cloud sea filter sand, 20x stone. Ding. Trade successful. Consumed 1x primary water purifier blueprint. Obtained 1x sky island foundation stone, 30x stone. Glancing at his steadily filling inventory of materials, a sharp glint flashed in Suze's eyes. I've got all the materials I need. He immediately opened the construction panel and selected the unlocked primary water purifier option. Construct. The wood, stones, and 10 faintly glowing chunks of cloud sea filter sand lifted, swirling and merging mid-air. Amid a rumbling mechanical roar, a strange contraption half the height of a human, assembled from timber and stone, landed beside his wooden cabin. Primary water purifier converts any liquid or cloud mist into pure water. Conversion efficiency, 1,000 milliliters per hour. Perfect. Suze patted the rough outer shell of the purifier. He remembered others complaining in the chat channel about toxic cloud mist they'd fished up. That substance was a deadly poison everyone avoided, yet to him, it was an endless supply of raw materials. Suze immediately listed several planks of wood in the trading zone and easily traded them for 3 glass jars sealed tight, each filled with toxic mist. He uncapped the jars, poured all the swirling dark green poisonous fog into the purifier's feed inlet, and firmly pressed the activation button. A low hum rumbled from the purifier, and the filter sand inside began to glow pale blue. Roughly 10 minutes later, a tiny drip echoed from the outlet at the bottom of the machine. A crystal clear, transparent drop of water fell into a plastic bottle he'd prepared in advance. Suze's eyes lit up, his gaze fixed rigidly on the spout. Drip, drip. The flow grew faster, soon forming a thin, clear stream. In less than 30 minutes, the bottle was filled. Suze picked up the bottle, twisted off the cap, and took a sniff. There was no strange odor whatsoever, only the faint sweet scent unique to pure water. Obtained, 200 milliliters pure water. Without hesitation, Suze listed this freshly produced bottle of pure water in the trading zone. Seller, Suze. Traded item, 200 milliliters pure water. Requested goods, 5 metal ingots, or 1 Sky Island Foundation stone, or rare blueprints. Message privately. Note, produced via blueprint, fully trustworthy. Continuously buying large quantities of rare materials. Penny pinchers and trolls keep out. The second this trade listing popped up, the entire regional channel fell dead silent for a full 10 seconds. Then the chat erupted into total chaos. Holy hell, pure water. It's really pure water. Am I seeing things? The blueprint really works. Legend Suze is unstoppable. I bow to you, boss. Wong Tung, you bastard. I almost believed your garbage and missed my chance to trade for the blueprint. Damn your whole bloodline. Where's Wong Tung? That idiot Wong Tung, get out here. Didn't you say the blueprint was worthless scrap? Didn't you claim nothing could be built from it? Does your face hurt now, punk? Wong Tung, who'd been whipping the crowd into a frenzy moments earlier, went completely quiet, not daring to utter a word. Meanwhile, survivors holding valuable stock descended into a frantic buying spree. Boss, I've got metal ingots. I broke down an iron crate I fished up yesterday. Please trade me water. Godsu, I have a Sky Island Foundation stone. Sending the trade right now. Accept it, please. Boss, I've got a fine-grade fishing line blueprint. How much water can I get for it? I messaged you privately. Check your inbox. Watching the flood of blinking private messages and trade requests in his back end, Suze smiled faintly. Monopoly is the most lucrative business there is. Riding the pure water output from his purifier, Suze raked in massive supplies over the next several hours. He bought up every last metal ingot, timber, and stone. Most importantly, he'd traded for 10 faintly glowing Sky Island Foundation stones. With these stones, he could finally launch his Grand Island construction project. This was the Sky Island Foundation stone, a miraculous item that expanded island territory. Night fell deep, bitter winds howling above the sea of clouds. Suze stood at the edge of his 10-square-meter Sky Island, staring down at the churning black void below, tossing a faintly cobalt-glowing stone between his palms. 10 square meters is cramped, barely enough room to turn around. Time to expand. Suze's gaze sharpened as he opened the construction panel and selected Island Expansion. A system prompt chimed instantly. Detected 10x Sky Island Foundation stones. Use all to expand current island? Yes. The word barely left his mouth when the 10 stones in his hand burst into 10 brilliant streaks of blue light, slamming into the dirt beneath his feet. Rumble. The entire Sky Island shook violently, as if struck by a magnitude 10 earthquake. Suze bent his knees slightly to steady himself. At the island's edges, soil stretched and grew outward as if alive. The cramped space expanded visibly before his eyes, land mass swelling with every churn of earth. The thunderous rumble died down after a full minute. Suze scanned his surroundings, a flicker of shock crossing his face. The tiny 10-square-meter islet had expanded to a full 20 square meters, its size doubled outright. Amazing! Suze couldn't help but roar. In this world where one misstep sent you plummeting into the abyss, solid land beneath your feet was the ultimate sense of security. The more space he had, the more he could accomplish. He immediately began planning the newly gained 10 square meters. Finished mapping out his plans, Suze felt a surge of refreshing clarity. Though it was deep into the night, he had no trace of sleepiness. Placed the wooden cabin and purifier at the center as the core living zone. Leave the empty plot to the left for future farmland. Once I fish up seeds, I can grow vegetables and other crops. The stretch along the right edge will be dedicated to fishing and storage. With his tenfold critical hit system paired with the water purifier, he'd completely escaped the threat of starvation and dehydration. Right now, all he could think about was growing stronger and surviving better in this brutal world. Suze walked over to the designated fishing zone and cast his line once more. The sea of clouds grew far more turbulent after dark. The pale gray mist deepened to pitch black, as if countless vengeful spirits writhed and roared within it. This time, Suze waited for ages. It was the dead of night, frigid wind making him shiver non-stop before the float finally twitched. There was no violent thrashing, only a gentle downward tug. Suze reeled the line in with practiced ease and hauled his catch ashore. By the faint glow spilling from his cabin, he made out what lay on the ground. It was a glass drift bottle glowing dimly, its mouth sealed tight with a cork stopper. A drift bottle? Who would leave something like this adrift in the cloud sea? Curious, Suze picked up the bottle and pulled out the cork. There was no food or blueprint inside, only a rolled sheepskin scroll. That Suze unrolled the scroll, and his pupils constricted sharply. Words were scrawled across the parchment in dark red liquid, the color of dried blood. The handwriting was messy and frantic, steeped in raw terror and despair. Whoever finds this, listen closely, no matter who you are. Do not venture below 30 meters into the cloud sea in your first month. Never. That place is a true abyss, hell itself. If you survive 30 days, the system will grant you an upgraded fishing rod. Only the clouds 100 meters down hold real treasure and the hope of survival. And beware the clouds sea tide in 7 days. They will climb up. All of them will climb up. The writing cut off abruptly, ending in a long smear of blood, as if the writer had been dragged away by something in their final moments. The clouds sea tide in 7 days? They'll climb up onto the islands. Suze spun sharply to stare at the churning black mist at the island's edge. Deep within that endless darkness, countless greedy eyes seemed fixed unblinkingly on his lone sky island. Suze drew a deep breath, staring at the blood-red words on the scroll as every hair on his body stood on end. The twisted, frantic script radiated suffocating despair. He flipped the scroll over and over, replaying the warning about the 7-day tide in his mind. This was no trivial prank. In this absurd Sky Island world, anyone who ignored the system's rules or warnings from those who'd come before would meet one inevitable fate: death. Suze forced himself to calm down. He glanced at his shabby bamboo fishing rod. Its line only stretched 30 meters, a hidden safety measure for new survivors put in place by the system. If he could endure the first month, his rod would upgrade, letting him fish for far superior supplies 100 meters down. But first, he had to live through the so-called cloud sea tide in 7 days. As Suze raced through plans in his head, the regional channel icon in the bottom right corner of his vision began flashing wildly. He opened it to find a 1-minute-long voice message pinned at the top. The sender was a man named Zhao Gang, his avatar a burly brute with a brutal, fleshy face. Frowning, Suze tapped to play the audio. "Guys, I'm starving to death. I've fished all day and pulled up nothing but junk, not a single bite to eat. I just realized I can extend my fishing line myself. I tore my clothes apart, twisted the fabric into rope, and tied it to the line. I'm casting deeper. Fortune favors the bold, and I refuse to believe this is all there is." Then a shrill snap of a breaking fishing line cut through the audio, followed by the thunderous crack of island dirt crumbling. "Shit. What is that? It's impossibly strong. Help. My arm's tangled. It's pulling me down. Somebody help. Don't. There are jaws down there, massive jaws. Help me." A dull splash echoed, and the audio cut out entirely. The entire regional channel went silent. A full minute passed before someone typed a trembling message. Where's Zhao Gang? Why is his avatar gray? He's dead, no question. Didn't you hear those screams? There are man-eating monsters lurking under the cloud sea. He's insane. Who told him to lengthen his line that far? That's just begging to die. I was starving too, just about to copy his trick and splice more rope. This scared me so bad I cut my line right away. This place is pure nightmare. What even is this world? Suze watched the panic spreading through the chat with cold detachment. Zhao Gang's brutal death had proven the drift bottle's warning with bloody reality. The depths below 30 meters were an off-limits death zone. Worse still, in 7 days, the monsters hiding in the abyss would climb onto the Sky Islands with the tide. Defenses. I have to build fortifications immediately. Alarm bells blared in Suze's mind. His 20-square-meter island was completely exposed, no barriers of any kind. If monsters climbed ashore, he'd have nowhere to hide. His wooden cabin was sturdy, but there was no telling if it could withstand attacks from unknown beasts. To stay alive, he needed to stockpile massive basic materials and build defensive structures. Suze opened the trading zone at once. His water purifier churned out endless pure water, his greatest asset. Without hesitation, he listed 3 full bottles of newly produced water, totaling 1,500 milliliters. Seller, Suze. Traded item, 3 by 500 milliliters pure water. Requested goods, 100 timber, or 100 stone, or 100 dirt, or any defensive blueprints. Message privately for details. Note: unlimited water supply. I'll trade for any materials I need. Only accepting construction materials and defensive blueprints. Don't waste my time with worthless junk. The second this listing went live, the regional channel erupted once more. Holy crap, it's Boss Suze again. Where's he getting all this water? Did he find a permanent water source? Thank God. I'm dying of thirst. I've got 50 stone and 50 dirt, enough for one bottle. Boss, please accept my trade. Boss, can I trade a fine-grade bed blueprint for a sip? I don't need much, just a little water. As survivors rushed to place trade requests, the persistent Wang Tung popped back into the chat. Don't buy his water, everyone. He's profiting off our suffering. Wang Tung spammed the channel nonstop. 100 timber for one bottle of water? He might as well rob us blind. All the supplies we worked all day to fish up are getting hoarded by him alone. Let's band together, nobody buy, starve before giving him a single resource. Once his water goes unsold, he'll slash prices. We need to boycott this bloodsucker. His words swayed a few gullible followers. He's right. This price is extortion. Let's all boycott him. Suze, you're far too selfish. We're all refugees from Blue Star. You should hand out water for free so we can pull through this together. Reading the moral blackmail on screen, Suze almost laughed out loud. These fools still hadn't grasped the truth of this world. Preaching morality and unity in a survival realm where human life meant nothing was utterly ridiculous. He couldn't be bothered typing a rebuttal and simply ignored the messages. As expected, Wang Tung's so-called alliance crumbled instantly in the face of the primal urge to survive. 30 seconds hadn't passed before the crisp trading chime sounded again. Ding. Trade successful. Consumed 500 milliliters pure water. Obtained 100 timber. Ding. Trade successful. Consumed 500 milliliters pure water. Obtained 100 stone. Ding. Trade successful. Consumed 500 milliliters pure water. Obtained 100 dirt. All 3 bottles sold out in an instant. The people who'd just been shouting for a boycott stared in shock. Who bought that? We agreed to stand together. You're all traitors. Wang Tung flew into a furious rage, screaming insults in the chat. Boycott my ass. My throat's parched dry. I'll die without water. If you're so principled, you go without drinking, idiot. Someone who'd successfully bought water shot back instantly. Exactly. Wang Tung, you're just broke and can't afford it. So you trick us into skipping the trade and almost get me killed. Boss Suze, do you have more water? I missed out earlier. I've got more materials to trade. Wang Tung became the laughingstock of the entire region, bombarded with vicious insults, and never dared post another message again. Suze smiled contentedly at the surge of 300 basic materials filling his inventory. This was the power of monopoly. As long as he held the water purifier, he could endlessly harvest resources from every survivor in the zone. Materials were plentiful now, but he still hadn't gotten his hands on any defensive blueprints. Unfazed, Suze picked up his fishing rod, baited the hook, and cast the line into the churning cloud sea. The night deepened further, and unearthly, hair-raising roars echoed from the mist, as if some terrible creatures were stirring awake in the darkness. About an hour later, the bamboo rod in his hands suddenly sank with immense weight. Suze's eyes sharpened. He planted his feet firmly, gripping the rod tight and hauling backward. The weight was staggering, far heavier than the treasure chest he'd reeled in before. The fishing line stretched taut, creaking dangerously under the strain. Come up with me. Suze gritted his teeth, the muscles in his arms bulging as he pulled upward with all his strength. A massive splash tore through the clouds. A heavy dark shape arced through the air and crashed onto the sky island with a dull metallic clang. Gasping for breath, Suze stepped forward to examine his catch. By the faint glow of the wooden cabin, he made out what lay on the ground. It was a square iron crate. Its surface was coated in dark reddish-brown rust, and a huge brass padlock hung from its latch. Most unsettling of all, a pungent stench of blood seeped faintly through the crate's cracks, as if it held something freshly slaughtered inside. Suze stared hard at the blood-soaked iron crate, his brows knotted tightly together. In this bizarre void island world, anything out of the ordinary could hide a deadly trap. He did not reach out to touch it recklessly. Instead, he pulled a heavy stone he had just traded for out of his backpack and crept cautiously toward the crate. No matter what hellish thing's inside, I'll smash it open first. A ruthless glint flashed in Suze's eyes. He lifted the stone, which weighed more than 10 pounds, and slammed it hard against the brass padlock. A deafening clang echoed, sending sparks flying everywhere. The padlock was already eaten away by rust, and that powerful blow crumpled it out of shape instantly. Suze did not pause. He struck it 3 or 4 more times until the lock split completely and fell off. He nudged the crate lid open with the tip of his toe, then stepped sharply back 2 paces, ready to react to any sudden threat. Yet no monster leaped out, nor were there mangled body parts as he'd feared. That sharp metallic reek of blood drifted from a tattered rag lining the crate's bottom. Resting quietly atop the blood-stained rag were 2 items: an all-black military tactical dagger with a cold, menacing design, and several small paper parcels tightly wrapped in oilskin. Suze's eyes lit up. He stepped forward at once and picked them up. Obtained, military tactical dagger ×1. Obtained, pack of common cabbage seeds ×1, pack of common tomato seeds ×1. The moment his fingers closed around the items, the mechanical voice in his head spoke right on cue. Ding. Host has acquired supplies. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations to host. Received military tactical daggers ×10. Congratulations to host. Received packs of common cabbage seeds ×10, packs of common tomato seeds ×10. The next second, 10 glinting tactical daggers and a small pile of vegetable seeds appeared neatly on the empty ground at Suze's feet. Suze picked up one dagger casually and hefted it in his palm. It had satisfying weight, a razor-sharp blade, serrations along the spine, and an anti-slip grip that fit perfectly in his hand. Top-tier gear. Suze could not help but praise it out loud. In a world where monster attacks could strike at any moment, a reliable melee weapon brought an indescribable sense of safety. He slipped one dagger straight through the leather belt at his waist, instantly feeling far more confident. The vegetable seeds were an unexpected bonus. They meant he would soon have fresh greens to replenish his vitamin intake. I'll keep 2 daggers for myself as spares. The other 8 go on the trade market to fleece everyone. A cold smirk tugged at Suze's lips. 10,000 people occupied this zone, and the vast majority had nothing but a shoddy fishing rod. They lacked any weapon to defend themselves when danger struck. The appearance of melee weapons would send the whole zone into an uproar. He opened the trade district without hesitation and listed all 8 tactical daggers for sale. Seller: Suze. Traded item: military tactical dagger ×1. Wanted materials: 300 wood, or 300 stone, or 300 dirt, or 2 Void Island Foundation stones ×2. Mixed trades accepted. Message privately to negotiate details. Stock remaining: 8. Note: genuine self-defense weapon, essential for slaying monsters and surviving. Limited stock, first come, first served. Penniless beggars and scammers stay away. As soon as the trade listing went live, the previously restless zone chat channel erupted into chaos. Holy hell, what am I seeing? A weapon. An actual weapon. A tactical dagger? This guy must be cheating. We're all fishing up scrap cloth and splinters, and this big shot's pulling weapons out of the void. God Sue. Grandpa Sue. Please sell me 1 dagger. I saw a shadow lurking in the clouds staring straight at me earlier. I'm terrified out of my mind. I need something to protect myself. The asking price is outrageous. 300 materials? We couldn't scrape that together even if we sold everything we own. Suze's private message inbox flooded instantly, hundreds of messages scrolling non-stop like a waterfall. All kinds of characters crawled out of the woodwork. A man named Li Jianan messaged him privately. Little brother Suze, I'm the CEO of Jiangwo Group from Yunhai City. Sell me all 8 daggers, and once we return to the real world, I'll wire you 10 million. No, 50 million yuan. I swear on my honor. Suze let out a cold laugh reading the message. Return to the real world? Did these idiots think this was just a game? He shot back a retort telling Li to take his 50 million and spend it in the afterlife, then blocked him without a second thought. Right after, a woman named Zhang Shui sent a message dripping with self-righteous indignation. Suze, we all face the threat of monsters. As one of humanity's survivors, you possess so many weapons, you ought to hand them out for free to protect everyone. Selling them at such an inflated price is profiting off humanity's crisis. How can you live with yourself? Suze was disgusted by her moral blackmail and shot a reply back. My conscience is perfectly clear, and I'd happily slice you open with a dagger to ease your lectures. Get lost. He blocked her too. For all the fools spamming him, there were also quite a few survivors with real resources. Among 10,000 people in this zone, a handful were absurdly lucky or grinders who fished non-stop for supplies. In less than 10 minutes, Suze received several viable trade offers. Big shot. I've got 2 Void Island Foundation stones for 1 dagger. God Sue. I have 200 wood and 100 stone. Trade me a dagger. I'll give 300 dirt. Let's trade right away. Suze sorted through the offers quickly and traded away all 8 daggers. Bright flashes lit the air as dozens of Void Island Foundation stones, plus mountains of wood, stone, and dirt materialized in his backpack. This single batch of trades secured his initial capital for development. He pulled the dirt out immediately, roped off a roughly 2 square meter patch on the left edge of his island beside the cabin, spread the thick soil evenly, and turned it into a simple farm plot. Afterward, he carefully tore open the seed wrappers and scattered the cabbage and tomato seeds evenly across the dirt. Water is the source of life. Consider yourselves lucky. Suze picked up a plastic bottle full of purified water and soaked the newly sown soil thoroughly. A damp, earthy tang rose from the dirt, as if it hummed with some special energy. Suze was fully focused on tending his farm plot when a shrill creaking sound suddenly came from behind him. He spun around sharply. The bamboo fishing rod he'd wedged in a rock crack for automated fishing was bent into an extreme arch, ready to snap in two at any second. Whoa, something huge's on the line. Suze's eyes widened. He dropped the water bottle, sprinted over in one stride, and clamped a tight grip on the rod handle. The second his hands wrapped around it, a terrifying yank surged up from deep within the sea of clouds, nearly dragging him rod and all off the island's edge into the abyss. Hold steady. Suze planted his feet hard into the dirt at the island's edge, leaned his entire weight backward, and tensed his core muscles like solid rock. The pull from beneath the clouds was absurdly powerful. This was nothing like hauling regular supplies. It felt like a tug of war against a charging rhinoceros. The bamboo rod creaked under the strain, thin spiderweb cracks splitting its surface. The rough handle rubbed his palms raw, blood welling at the webbing of his thumbs, yet he gritted his teeth and refused to let go. He knew one truth. The stronger the pull, the more valuable whatever was hooked below. This brutal stalemate dragged on for 20 full minutes. Suze's stamina drained rapidly. Sweat soaked his back and dripped steadily off his chin. The thrashing far below the clouds finally weakened, the brute force fading away. Now's my chance. Suze seized the opening sharply, drew a deep breath, veins bulging along his arms. He roared, pouring every last ounce of strength into a violent upward heave. Splashing waves crashed. The churning gray sea of clouds tore open, and a weathered wooden barrel dripping with mist was hauled violently into the air. The barrel arced through the sky and crashed heavily onto the dirt at Suze's feet with a dull thud. Suze collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air, his arms trembling uncontrollably. He swiped sweat from his face and scrambled over to the barrel. The barrel looked ancient, its rims coated in black moss. He pried the lid open hard. It was empty inside, save for a rolled sheepskin parchment resting on the bottom. Another blueprint? Suze's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly grabbed the parchment. Obtained. Blueprint. Simple wooden fence ×1. Simple wooden fence blueprint. Unlocks fence construction upon learning. Build cost. 5 wood per meter. Provides basic physical defense to block small beasts and low-tier monster incursions. The mechanical voice echoed in his head right on schedule. Ding. Host has acquired supplies. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations to host. Received blueprints. Simple wooden fence ×10. Staring at the thick stack of blueprints in his hands, Suze's eyes blazed with excitement. It was like getting a pillow right when he was ready to sleep. He'd been fretting non-stop over the cloud tide arriving in 7 days, unsure how to fend off the monsters that would climb onto the island. With these wooden fences, a full perimeter wall around his island would send his safety level soaring. Learn. Suze crushed one blueprint without hesitation. Knowledge of fence construction flooded straight into his mind. He glanced at his backpack. He'd traded daggers and water for over 1,000 wood, more than enough to build everything he needed. Construct. Standing at the center of his island, Suze activated the build function with a thought. With supplies in his backpack depleted rapidly, streams of white light flying toward the island's perimeter. A steady clattering of timber assembling filled the air as waist-high fences rose all around the shoreline. Thick, rounded logs sharpened at the tops, nailed side by side. Within mere minutes, the entire 20-square-meter island was fully enclosed by sturdy wooden fencing, with only a small hinged wooden gate left open by the fishing zone. Suze stepped forward and shoved the fence hard. It did not shift an inch, rock solid. Staring at his new defensive perimeter, the heavy weight of worry lifted off his chest at last. Meanwhile, panic spread like wildfire through the zone chat. Everyone watch out. There are way more shadowy figures in the clouds now. I just saw a scaled tail sweep past my island edge. It nearly flattened my wooden cabin. I saw them too. Those monsters are swimming upward. Are they climbing out to hunt us? Help. I don't even have a cabin, just sleep on bare dirt. If monsters come up, I'm dead meat. Does anyone have defense blueprints? I'll pay top price. Begging you, save me. Suze shot a cold smile reading the desperate cries in the channel. These terrified survivors were prime targets for his trades. He opened the trade district again and listed the remaining 9 simple wooden fence blueprint listings. Seller: Suze. Traded item: blueprint, simple wooden fence ×1. Wanted materials: 3 void island foundation stones, or rare blueprints. Message privately. Stock remaining: 9. Note: life-saving construction blueprint, blocks monster attacks. Only 3 foundation stones per copy, no loss, no scam. Skip this and wait for death. For 1 heartbeat. The chat channel fell silent after the listing posted, then erupted into a frantic buying spree. 4 wealthy survivors holding spare materials. 3 foundation stones in exchange for survival was an unbeatable deal. All 9 blueprints sold out in under 5 minutes. 27 void island foundation stones materialized directly in Suze's backpack. The era of island infrastructure expansion begins. Suze eyed his haul in the backpack with satisfaction. With these foundation stones, he could expand his island drastically whenever he pleased. Night fell completely, plunging the entire sea of clouds into pitch-black darkness. Only faint light seeped out from Suze's wooden cabin. He sat on his wooden bed, gnawing on a rock-hard black bread loaf and washing it down with purified water, forcing each mouthful down. The food was coarse and flavorless, yet in this hellish void, a full stomach was a luxury countless survivors could only dream of. He let out a long breath, the tight tension in his nerves easing slightly. But just as he prepared to lie down and rest, a bone-chilling scraping sound cut through the silent night. Scratch, creak, scratch. It sounded like something sharp raking violently against timber. The noise grated unbearably, sending chills racing up his spine. Worse yet, the sound did not rise from the clouds below. It came clearly from outside his wooden fence perimeter. Something had climbed onto the island. Scratch, creak. The scraping amplified in the dead quiet, like a saw blade dragging back and forth across Suze's frayed nerves. Every muscle in his body locked rigid. He shot upright off the bed, drew the tactical dagger from his waist in one fluid motion, his gaze sharp and feral as a wolf's. Something really climbed up? Suze lightened his footsteps, moving like a poised stalking leopard toward the cabin window. He peered through the crack, fixed on the direction of the noise. Outside, the darkness was absolute. Only faint, eerie glimmers flickered occasionally as the cloud sea churned. The sound originated from the fence on the island's right side. Suze tightened his grip on the dagger, held his breath, and kicked the wooden gate open hard. He rolled forward with the momentum, pressing himself flat behind a section of fence. The creaking scraping continued unabated. Gritting his teeth, Suze shot upright, dagger raised high, and squinted down through the dim glow. The next second, he froze. No fanged, grotesque monsters lurked beyond the fence, no scaled tentacles snaking over the logs. Tangled across the fence posts was a long, thorny vine swept up by gale winds. The vine was jet black, lined with backward curving thorns. It whipped back and forth in the frigid wind howling over the clouds, its barbs scraping the fence planks to create that terrifying scratching noise. Damn it, Suze swore under his breath. His taut nerves unwound all at once, and he realized cold sweat soaked his entire back. Scared me half to death, thought the monsters showed up early. He hooked the vine free with his dagger and tossed it back into the sea of clouds. Though it was a false alarm, that midnight fright served as a harsh warning. The Void Island was blind at night, without any source of light. He could not see a single thing happening beyond his fence. If real monsters had crept up just now, the darkness would have left him at a devastating disadvantage. I need to find fire-starting supplies as soon as possible. Even torches will do. Suze made a mental note and turned back into the cabin. He slept restlessly that night, the tactical dagger tucked beneath his pillow. The slightest rustle jolted him awake. Dawn finally broke, pale gray light spilling once more over the endless cloud sea. Dark circles heavy under his eyes, Suze stepped out of the cabin. His first stop was the farm plot he'd cleared the night before. He froze the moment he drew near. Tender green sprouts dotted the previously bare dirt. After only one night, the cabbage and tomato seeds had not only germinated, they grew shockingly fast, already 2 to 3 centimeters tall. This growth rate's ridiculous, like cheating. Suze knelt down to study the young shoots closely. It hit him instantly. This was no ordinary soil. A mix of the Void Island's native dirt and the purified water he'd poured seemed to carry a faint growth-accelerating property. At this pace, he would have fresh vegetables to eat within days. In high spirits, Suze marched to the fishing zone and cast his line back into the cloud sea. Survival pressure left him no time to slack off. Though he now had water and perimeter defenses, his food stock only held a few dry black bread loaves and cured meat. eating nothing, but that was unpalatable and slowed his stamina recovery. Luck favored him heavily that day. In less than 2 hours, the float plunged sharply underwater. Suze reeled the rod up with practiced speed, pulling hard against the line. A splash echoed, and a square metal tin alongside a small cloth sack crashed onto the island ground. Suze hurried over to pick them up. Obtained. Can spam ×1. Obtained. Full flint steel fire starter set ×1. Perfect. Suze pumped his fist in elation. Just what I needed. Ding. Detected host acquired supplies. The 10x critical hit system has activated. Congratulations, host. You've obtained Can Luncheon Meat ×10. Congratulations, host. You've obtained flint steel kits ×10 sets. A flash of light swept across the ground, piling up a small mountain of luncheon meat cans, with 10 neat flint and steel sets lined up beside it. Suze grabbed one flint kit without hesitation, then rummaged through his backpack for drywood shavings and straw. He scraped the flint hard. Crackle. Sparks showered onto the straw, and a thin wisp of smoke curled upward. Suze puffed his cheeks and blew gently. Flames flared to life instantly. Finally, fire. Warmth washed over him from the blaze, and he burst into unrestrained laughter. He quickly stacked stones into a simple fire pit and stoked the flames brighter. Then he pried open a luncheon meat can with his dagger, skewered the meat on a wooden stick, and held it over the fire to roast. Moments later, fat sizzled off the meat's surface, and a rich, savory aroma drifted all across the floating island. Suze swallowed hard, ignoring the scalding heat, and took a huge bite. Crispy outside, tender inside, brimming with salty meat flavor. This hot, calorie-dense fatty food quickly soothed his ravaged stomach. Suze polished off 2 full cans of roasted luncheon meat in one go, drank half a bottle of purified water, and let out a contented belch. Sitting beside the fire, he opened the region chat channel. The channel was flooded with despairing messages. Last night's brutal cold snap had left countless survivors suffering terribly. I'm freezing to death. The wind raged all night. My wooden hut leaks air on every side. I thought I'd succumb to hypothermia. Anyone got food? I'll trade everything I own for a single bite. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I don't even have the strength to hold my fishing rod. So cold, so hungry. When will this hellish place end? Reading these desperate posts, Suze patted his warm, full belly. He had a full stomach, clean drinking water, and a fire for warmth. He might as well have been glamping in the wilderness. Still, he knew his clothes were far too thin, and he needed to prepare ahead for harsh weather. He pulled up the trade board and posted a new listing. Seller, Suze, trade item, Can Luncheon Meat ×1. Wanted, warm outerwear windbreaker, down jacket, etc., sleeping bag, or rare materials. DM for details. Stock remaining, 3. Note, hot high-fat, high-calorie meat that can save your life. Only accepting warm survival gear, first come, first served. The second this post went live, survivors shivering and lightheaded from starvation stared at the words, luncheon meat, with ravenous, green eyes. A ferocious news scramble for supplies erupted across the region channel. Suze sat calmly by his fire, watching the chaos unfold with cold indifference. In this survival game, he was already leagues ahead of every other human trapped here. Yet it was nowhere near enough. The cloud sea tide in 7 days would be the true trial. Only 4 days remained until the cloud sea tide. Chilled dawn winds sliced across the floating island like blades, rousing Suze from sleep beside the fire. He rubbed his stiff cheeks and headed straight for the farm plot next to his wooden hut. The cabbage and tomato seeds he'd planted earlier had grown at an absurd, hormone-fueled pace, nourished by the island's magical soil and purified water. Overnight, tender green leaves had unfurled to palm size, their vivid, vibrant hues striking against the gray, lifeless wasteland of floating land masses. At this growth rate, I'll have fresh vegetables to eat tomorrow. Suze grinned in satisfaction, his mood vastly lifted. He turned back to the fire pit, rekindled the flames with flint and steel, pried open another luncheon meat can to roast until grease bubbled off it, and enjoyed a hearty breakfast paired with sweet purified water. Heat flooded his insides, filling every muscle with renewed strength. In this brutal world where a single sip of water cost blood to obtain, Suze lived in utter comfort. Just as Suze reached for his fishing rod to start another day of angling, a shrill crimson system alert blared inside every survivor's head at once. Global region announcement. Survivor count in this zone has dropped below 8,000. Mortality rate hits 20. Hidden system condition triggered. Regional leaderboards unlocked. Regional leaderboards activated. Current rankings available. Floating island size rank. Prosperity rank. Notice, rankings reset weekly. Top 10 players on each board receive a mysterious survival treasure chest from the system. Fight to stay alive, survivors. The emotionless mechanical voice struck every person like a sledgehammer to the chest. Suze's smile faded, his expression turning grave. Down below 8,000? Only a few days have passed, and over 1,200 people are dead. He gasped in shock. Though he knew this world was merciless, the staggering elimination rate sent a chill down his spine. Some starved to death, others perished from thirst, countless froze solid overnight, and a handful ignored warnings to cast their lines too deep, dragged into the abyss by monsters lurking beneath the cloud sea. Human life here was worth less than grass. No time for sentimentality. Suze tapped the newly glowing leaderboard's icon in the corner of his holographic panel. He needed to see how many dangerous competitors hid in this region. First, he opened the floating island size rank. First place, Suze, island area, 20 square meters. Second place, Zhao Tianba, island area, 12 square meters. Third place, Li Jiangguo, island area, 11 square meters. Fourth to 10,000th place, all stuck at the starting 10 square meters. Suze raised an eyebrow and switched to the adjacent prosperity rank. First place, Suze, constructions owned, sturdy wooden hut, basic water purifier, simple wooden fence, basic farm plot. Second place, Zhao Tianba, constructions owned, ramshackle wooden hut, simple wooden fence. Third place, Zhang Shui, constructions owned, ramshackle wooden hut. No surprise at all. Suze let out a cold laugh. Blessed with the overpowered 10x critical hit system, his stockpile of supplies and base development left every other survivor far behind. He claimed first place on both leaderboards, with stats that completely dwarfed the competition by a massive margin. The moment the leaderboards went live, the stagnant region channel erupted in chaos, messages scrolling too fast to read. Holy hell, Legend Suze took first on both rankings. He's definitely cheating. 20 square meters? Where did he get so many island expansion stones? I've fished for 3 days and haven't found a single fragment. Check the prosperity rank. A sturdy hut? A water purifier? He even built fences and farmland. We're still sleeping in mud, and he's practically got a villa on his island. Lord Su, please take me in. I'll warm your bed, cook all your meals. I'll do anything for a bite of food. No wonder he had so much purified water and tactical daggers for sale yesterday. He's already soaring ahead, the ultimate survival expert. Messages flooded the chat non-stop, every survivor stunned speechless by the sudden leaderboard reveal. In a realm where most people starved and lacked even basic shelter, Suze's stats were a crushing dimensional divide, blinding everyone with envy. Countless private message requests poured in like snowflakes, begging for handouts, pleading to be taken under his wing, or feigning misery to leech supplies for free. Suze curled his lips into a sneer as he scanned the messages. Foolish lot, do they think this is some childish game? At that moment, a glaring new post popped up in the region channel, sent by Zhao Tianba, the man trapped in second place beneath Suze on both rankings. Don't let Suze fool all of you. Zhao Tianba's avatar was a bald brute with a vicious face, his tone thick with bitter jealousy. What's he even got going for him? He just got absurdly lucky and exploited some system glitch. This is humanity's fight for survival, and he hoards all those supplies. He should hand them over to share with everyone. How else are we supposed to live? As soon as Zhao Tianba's words appeared, several envious copycats jumped in to agree. Exactly. Why does he get a solid hut and clean water while we freeze and starve? This isn't fair. Suze, don't be so selfish. Greater power means greater responsibility. Hand over your supplies, or we'll all boycott you. No one will buy your goods. We'll ostracize you entirely. Yeah, boycott him. Make him share the water purifier for everyone. Suze nearly laughed out loud at the nauseating moral blackmail on his screen. These idiots had warped logic beyond belief. Even now, they clung to this ridiculous, rob the rich to feed the poor nonsense. I fished up every supply fair and square. Why would I split them with you useless trash? He didn't even bother typing a retort. In this dog-eat-dog survival world, strength was the only truth. If you reason with them, they'd bully you. Only when you brandished a blade would they kneel and beg for mercy. Only 3 days remained until the cloud sea tide warned of on the parchment. He had no time to waste on these attention-seeking clowns. Close the channel. Out of sight, out of mind. With a thought, Suze shut down his virtual panel, blocking out all the commotion entirely. He drew a deep breath against the howling cold winds sweeping his floating island, then picked up his frayed bamboo, fishing rod once more. His defenses and supplies were still far too lacking to survive the incoming tide in 3 days' time. Time ticked away second by second. The cloud sea churned through daylight, yet remained relatively calm. Suze sat motionless at the island's edge like a statue, eyes fixed rigidly on his bobber floating above the mist. Hours slipped by, and he caught nothing but driftwood and clumps of foul-smelling garbage. Night fell fast. The darkness this evening was deeper than all prior nights, pitch black, no visibility at all. Violent gales raged around the floating island, wailing like tormented ghosts. Suze could barely make out the muddy ground beneath his feet by the faint glow leaking from his wooden hut behind him. Cold crept up his pant legs, sending violent shivers through his body. Still, he refused to back down, clinging tight to his fishing rod. Deep into the night, as Suze's eyelids grew heavy with exhaustion, the bamboo pole in his hands lurched downward violently. Shit! A massive catch. Suze jolted fully awake, adrenaline surging through his veins. The pole was monstrous, the fishing line humming taut in the dark, threatening to snap any second. He planted his feet deep in the mud, twisted his waist, and leaned backward at a dramatic angle. Get up here. Gritting his teeth, his arm muscles bulged, veins popping prominently beneath his skin. Vicious thrashing echoed from the depths of the dark cloud sea below. Whatever he'd hooked fought desperately to drag itself down. Suze did not relent an inch, holding fast and reeling it toward him little by little. This tug of war dragged on for over 10 minutes, his arms burning as if they might tear from their sockets. Finally, the resistance from below weakened. Now, Suze roared, yanking the fishing rod upward hard. Splash! A shape burst through the swirling mist, flying into the air before crashing heavily onto the island's mud with a dull thud. Suze gasped for air, rubbing his aching wrists, and stepped forward in the dark. By the faint firelight, his fingers closed around a rigid waterproof plastic case. What's this? Suze pried open the case's latches. Inside rested a matte black tactical flashlight with a rugged utilitarian frame, heavy and solid in his grip, its shell forged from tough aerospace aluminum alloy. Acquired. High-intensity tactical flashlight ×1. Before Suze could celebrate, the familiar mechanical system tone echoed in his mind once more. Ding. Detected host acquired supplies. The 10x critical hit system has activated. Congratulations, host. You've obtained high-intensity tactical flashlights ×10. The plastic case on the ground blurred for a split second, and 10 identical tactical flashlights lined up neatly at Suze's feet. Damn, this is incredible. Suze swore out loud in excitement. In this electricity-free world where nights were as black as ink, limited vision was a fatal vulnerability. With these flashlights, he would no longer be blind after dark. Suze grabbed one flashlight at once and fumbled for the rear power switch. Click. A blinding beam of white light tore through the darkness, shooting straight out across the distant cloud sea. The beam was intensely powerful, illuminating a dozen meters ahead, laying the churning gray mist fully bare. This brightness is absolutely perfect. Suze swept the light back and forth excitedly, the brilliant glow wrapping him in unmatched safety. As Suze savored his new treasure, the region channel icon in the corner of his vision flashed frantically, accompanied by a shrill crimson alarm. Frowning, he opened the channel. A 30-second voice message was pinned to the very top, its sender's avatar faded gray, the marker of a dead survivor. Suze hit play, and a blood-curdling scream exploded across the floating island. "Ah, help! My island's tearing apart. It's climbing up. It crawled up the fishing line. No, my leg. Ah, save me. There's something under the cloud sea. It's eating me. Ah." The screams mixed with splintering wood, collapsing mud, and horrid wet crunching chewing sounds. Then silence. The entire chat channel fell dead quiet. Over a full minute passed before someone typed a trembling message. What just happened? What attacked him? I know that guy. He posted earlier saying he was starving so bad, he tore his clothes to twist extra line onto his rod, trying to fish deeper for food. And then this. He's insane. We were all warned not to cast deep. There really are monsters beneath the cloud sea. It's terrifying. I heard scratching sounds under my island a minute ago. I just want to go home. I don't want to die here. Panic spread through the channel like a plague, a heavy shadow settling over every survivor's heart. Suze closed the channel without a flicker of emotion. That reckless fool had sacrificed his life to prove the rules were unforgiving. Depths below 30 meters were an untouchable death zone. 3 days left. Suze tightened his grip on the tactical flashlight, his gaze turning ice cold. Once the tide arrived, the beasts hiding in the abyss would surge forth en masse. He had to prepare every possible defense to face this true life or death trial. Chilled dawn winds thick with mist roused Su Zhe from light sleep. He rubbed his gritty eyes and sat up on his wooden bed. He'd slept only a few hours, yet in this perpetually high-stress world, even a short rest was a luxury. Grabbing the tactical flashlight beside his bed, he pushed open the wooden hut door and stepped outside. The sky had not fully brightened, the cloud sea still shrouded in oppressive gray haze. Su Zhe flipped on the flashlight, its piercing beams slicing through dimness and lighting up the entire floating island as if it were broad daylight. His first stop was the farm plot to the left of the hut. The second he drew near, Su Zhe's eyes flew wide open in shock. Holy hell, these things mutated overnight. The palm-sized seedlings had undergone explosive growth overnight and fully matured. Lush cabbage leaves were thick and juicy, each plant as big as a wash basin. The tomato vines beside them hung heavy with plump, glossy red fruits dotted with dewdrops, releasing a sweet, tempting fragrance. The island soil plus purified water, this growth speed is absurd. Su Zhe swallowed hard. In this desperate wasteland where everyone survived on rock-hard black bread and dried meat, fresh vegetables were a royal luxury. Su Zhe drew his tactical dagger, cut down 2 full cabbages, and plucked 5 ripe tomatoes. He walked over to the basic water purifier, filled his hands with clean water, and washed the produce thoroughly. No cooking pot. It was no trouble for Su Zhe. He retrieved an empty large luncheon meat can from the day before, cleaned it, filled it with water, and set it atop the fire pit. He struck flint and steel. Flames quickly lapped at the can's base. Once the water boiled, Su Zhe tossed in chopped cabbage and tomatoes, then scooped out half a can of luncheon meat, sliced it into chunks, and dumped them into the soup. Minutes later, a rich, savory aroma drifted all across the floating island. The sweet tang of tomatoes, the fresh, mild aroma of cabbage, mingled with the rich, fatty scent of luncheon meat as everything churned violently in boiling water. Glug! Su Zhe swallowed a massive mouthful of saliva. He could wait no longer. Grabbing a chunk of cabbage dripping with meat broth using crude chopsticks whittled from wooden sticks and shoving it straight into his mouth. Hot, hot, hot. So good. The crisp sweetness of vegetables and salty savor of meat exploded across his tongue, stimulating every single taste bud. Ignoring the scalding heat, Su Zhe lifted his metal tin can and gulped down broth and meat in loud slurps. He devoured the meal in record time, not a single drop of soup left behind. A warm surge rose from his stomach, spreading through every limb and vein. Su Zhe let out a contented burp, feeling thoroughly revitalized, brimming with boundless energy. Full and fueled, time to work. Refreshed, Su Zhe strode over to the fishing spot, baited his line skillfully, and cast the rod out into the roiling sea of clouds. Luck seemed to favor him greatly today. Barely an hour passed before the float plunged sharply underwater. Got a bite. Su Zhe dropped into a wide horse stance, gripping the bamboo rod tightly with both hands and heaving upward. The pull was surprisingly mild this time. With minimal effort, he hauled his catch out of the cloud sea. Thud! A water-soaked green canvas sack crashed onto the muddy ground. Su Zhe stepped forward and unfastened the sack's buckle. Inside rested a brand-new black folding tool. Acquired. 1X Multifunctional Engineer Shovel. Multifunctional Engineer Shovel. Forged from high-tensile alloy. Integrating shovel, pickaxe, saw, hatchet, and more. It is not only a prime construction tool, but also an excellent close-quarters self-defense weapon. Score. Su Zhe's eyes lit up. Ding. Host has obtained supplies. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You received 10x multifunctional engineer shovels. Flashes of light flickered nonstop. 10 weighty engineer shovels lined neatly before Su Zhe. He picked one up at random, unfolded it, and hefted it in his palm. Solid and heavy, its sharpened edge could chop wood as easily as an axe. With these, I can pull off major defensive works along the edge of my floating island. A defensive blueprint instantly took shape in Su Zhe's mind. Just as he prepared to get to work, the regional chat channel in the bottom right corner of his vision erupted with activity. Zhao Tianba was throwing another fit in the channel, but this time, instead of hurling insults, he bragged relentlessly. Guys, I just fished up an ultra-rare item, a tattered survival journal. Uncontainable glee and arrogance oozed from Zhao Tianba's tone. You want to know what's written inside? Pure horror. In a few days, an unthinkable catastrophe will sweep the entire sea of clouds. Anyone caught unprepared will die without a trace. His words sent shockwaves through the survivors, already skittish after last night's fatal casualty. What catastrophe? Brother Zhao, don't scare us. What exactly does the journal say? Will monsters climb up here? How do we defend ourselves? Please share the journal's contents. Save all of us. Watching the flood of pleas in the chat, Zhao Tianba bared his greedy fangs. Share it? I fished up this intel fair and square. Why hand it over for free? If you want to live, trade supplies. Wood, stone, island foundation blocks, food, water, take anything you've got. Hand over enough resources, and I'll spill the truth about the catastrophe plus survival tactics. Spots limited, first come first served. He was shamelessly exploiting their information gap to bleed them dry. Yet when staring death in the face, rationality crumbles. It did not take long for survivors to cave in. I'll trade 100 stacks of wood. Tell me the truth, Brother Zhao. I've got one floating island foundation block. Swap it for the intel. Suze watched the farce unfold and shook his head with a cold smirk. Foolish Zhao Tianba thought he held earth-threatening secrets, when all he knew of was the incoming cloud sea tide. Suze had learned everything ages ago from drift bottles, and far more thoroughly than Zhao Tianba ever could. Let him prattle on. When the tide hits, we'll see if his pathetic horde can hold back the monsters. Tuning out the noisy channel entirely, Suze closed the interface. He grabbed an engineer's shovel and marched toward the wooden palisades lining the floating island's edge. Defense construction begins now. Zhao Tianba fleeced survivors non-stop in the regional chat, swimming in looted supplies. Terrified of the looming catastrophe, countless survivors surrendered their hard-earned survival resources in exchange for a slim chance to live. Staring at the mountain of materials stacked in his inventory, Zhao Tianba's ego inflated to an unbearable degree. He fancied himself ruler of this zone, no longer intimidated by Suze, who had always outmatched him. Suze, think you're untouchable? You don't know a thing about the coming catastrophe. You'll die all the same in a few days. Zhao Tianba tapped Suze's avatar and sent an outrageously arrogant private message. Suze, I know you've hoarded tons of supplies, even a water purifier, a god-tier tool. But you have zero clue what's coming. Hand over your purifier and all pure water, kowtow 3 times to me, and I'll take pity and tell you how to survive. Otherwise, wait to get torn to shreds by monsters, drowning in terror. Mid-digging, Suze's private message alert pinged. He paused his labor, opened the message, and laughed in exasperation. Is this idiot's brain filled with manure? Wasting not a single extra word, he shot back a reply. Keep your precious catastrophe for the afterlife. Don't forget to pick a nice urn for yourself. He sent the message and blocked Zhao Tianba in one fluid motion. Not a single extra syllable wasted on a fool blind to reality. Closing the interface, Suze tightened his grip on the multifunctional engineer shovel once more. His current mission, turn this entire floating island into an impenetrable iron fortress. The wooden palisades can hold off ordinary beasts, but swarms or oversized monsters will break through in minutes. A second line of defense must be built inside the fence. Swinging the shovel hard, Suze dug furiously right against the inner side of the wooden barrier. Though the island's soil was damp, the razor-sharp shovel sliced through it like tofu. His goal, dig a circular trench wrapping the entire island, 1/2 meter wide and 1 meter deep. The work drained massive stamina. Suze stripped off his shirt, bare-chested, sweat dripping down defined muscle lines into the mud. He worked like an indefatigable excavator, shovelful after shovelful of dirt moved. 3 grueling hours later, a neat ring trench encircled the island. But he was far from finished. Suze pulled piles of excess lumber traded earlier from his backpack, sharpened one end of each plank with his tactical dagger. He then planted these sharpened stakes densely along the trench floor, all points facing upward. Perfect. He patted dirt off his hands, satisfied with his handiwork. Now any monster breaking through the outer palisades would tumble straight into the trench, impaled through and through by the jagged wooden spikes. After backbreaking labor, Suze's stomach rumbled with hunger again. He walked to the fishing spot, splashed cold water on his face, and cast his rod once more. Dusk fell, the setting sun bleeding crimson. The churning sea of clouds dyed an eerie dark red, an unsettling sight to behold. The bamboo rod in his hands jolted violently. Suze hauled back with practiced precision. Splash! A square camouflage cardboard box flew onto the island. Suze hurried over to pick it up, eyes blazing with excitement the moment he saw its label. Acquired. 1x high-calorie self-heating military MRE. High-calorie self-heating military MRE. Military standard ration including compressed biscuits, dehydrated beef, chocolate, energy drinks, and more. Reheat with a tiny amount of water, delivering massive calories and long-lasting satiety. Hell yes, this is a lifesaver. When the tide arrived, monsters could climb up at any second. He would have zero time to build fires and cook. These self-heating rations solved all his meal troubles completely. Ding. Host has obtained supplies. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You received 10 crates of high-calorie self-heating military MREs. Crates, not single packets. In the next instant, a mountain of camouflage cardboard crates materialized at Suze's feet. He excitedly pried one crate open, finding 20 neatly packed MRE portions inside. 200 meals total, enough to eat until I'm sick of them. Cackling, Suze tore open one ration pack and poured in a splash of purified water. Within seconds, the heating pouch reacted violently, billowing hot steam. Minutes later, a steaming bowl of dehydrated beef rice was ready. He shoveled mouthfuls greedily, savoring the warmth spreading through his gut from the high-energy meal. That fool Zhao Tianba thought he could blackmail me with useless intel? I'm eating like a king with maxed-out defenses, just waiting for monsters to march to their deaths. Full and rested, Suze hauled all MRE crates into his wooden cabin for storage. Night descended. He switched on his high-lumen flashlight, shining its beam deep into the cloud sea. Only 2 days remained until the tide. Dramatic shifts swept through the sea of clouds climate. The once mild cool breeze turned biting frigid, temperatures plummeting more than 10 degrees Celsius. Worse still, the pale gray cloud sea darkened rapidly into oppressive charcoal gray. Thick clouds churned furiously like boiling water, low rumbling booms echoing from below, as if some abomination stirred violently in the depths. Panic hit a fever pitch in the regional chat. God, look at the cloud sea. It's turned black. I saw it. I leaned over the edge and spotted a massive black shadow gliding beneath the clouds, at least a dozen meters long. Monsters, they're coming. Help. The cold is unbearable. I'm freezing stiff. I'll trade all my supplies for a jacket. Zhao Tianba, you said you knew how to survive the catastrophe. Tell us now? When will the monsters climb up? Faced with endless pleas, Zhao Tianba, once busy fleecing everyone, fell into an eerie silence. His tattered journal held no survival countermeasures, only the single phrase, the catastrophe. He trembled alone in his ramshackle cabin, just as terrified as everyone else. Suze frowned against the stinging cold wind. Temperatures keep dropping. This cabin's sturdy, but wind still seeps through the cracks. He sprang into action, digging mounds of soil with his engineer's shovel, mixing mud with water and wood shavings to make thick clay plaster. He smothered every single crevice of the cabin wall with the mud from the inside, sealing all gaps tight for full insulation reinforcement. Once finished, the cabin retained heat vastly better. By afternoon, Suze returned to the fishing spot. The closer the tide drew, the heavier his sense of foreboding grew. Palisades and spiked trenches only offered passive defense. He needed means to strike back, a fighting chance even against colossal beasts. Please send me weapons, heaven. Suze prayed silently. As if answering his plea, a terrifying yank ripped through his bamboo rod. Creak. The cracked bamboo bent into a perilous U-shape, threatening to splinter apart at any second. Shit. This pull's insane. Suze's feet carved 2 deep furrows into the mud, nearly dragged straight off the floating island's edge. He roared, firing every muscle in his waist to plant his stance firm. Get up here, damn it. Burning every ounce of strength, veins bulging on his forearms, he wrenched backward with all his might. Boom. A massive tear split the cloud sea open. A heavy black rectangular metal crate hurtled onto the island with a howl, slamming into the mud and carving a shallow crater. Suze gasped for air, both arms numb from the strain. Shaking out his limbs, he strode to the black crate. Forged from heavy-duty alloy, its surface etched with cold metallic grain. Suze pried the latches open with his tactical dagger and lifted the lid. A thick whiff of machine oil washed over him. Resting neatly inside lay a sleek, futuristic all-black precision weapon. Wide, thick composite limbs fitted with a complex pulley system, its stock sanded smooth, glinting with deadly cold luster. Beside the crossbow sat bundled arrows shimmering with metallic sheen. Acquired, 1x tactical compound crossbow. Acquired, 20x alloy armor piercing bolts. Tactical compound crossbow. High-precision long-range lethal weapon equipped with labor-saving pulley system and optical scope. Devastating firepower, easily piercing the skulls of low-tier monsters. Suze's breath hitched. A ranged weapon. Ding. Host has obtained supplies. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You received 10x tactical compound crossbows. Congratulations, host. You received 200x alloy armor piercing bolts. Blinding white light flashed. 10 cold lethal crossbows and 200 sharp alloy bolts spread across the muddy ground at his feet. Ha! With these, what monster do I have to fear? Overjoyed, Suze grabbed one crossbow, its weight substantial in his grasp. He stepped his foot into the cocking stirrup and hauled the string back with both hands. Click, the taut bowstring locked firmly on the trigger. He slid an alloy bolt into the track, raised the crossbow, and lined the optical scope on a thick wooden palisade post 10 meters away. Let's test its power. Suze's gaze turned sharp, and he squeezed the trigger. Twang! A deep hum vibrated through the bow as the bolt streaked forward like a black lightning bolt. Squelch! The solid log, as thick as a grown man's thigh, was pierced clean through by the alloy bolt. The arrowhead vanished into empty space beyond the fence, with splinters flying everywhere. Holy hell, this penetration is monstrous. Staring at the transparent hole bored through the timber, Suze drew a sharp breath in awe. With 10 tactical crossbows and 200 armor-piercing bolts, his floating island's defensive network was fully complete. Long-distance sniping with crossbows, close-quarters counterattacks with spiked trenches, and engineer shovels. Bring them on. Crossbow raised, Suze stood at the island's edge, staring coldly down at the churning charcoal gray sea of clouds below. No matter what abominations you are, climb up, and you'll never leave alive. Darkness deepened. Fewer than 48 hours remaining until the cloud sea tide warned of on the parchment scroll. Temperatures on the floating island plummeted to freezing point. Gale winds sliced across faces like blades, burning raw. The regional chat channel descended into total chaos. The cause was simple. Zhao Tianba, who'd boasted nonstop about his secret catastrophe intel, could no longer keep up his charade. As conditions grew grimmer, survivors who'd traded all their life giving supplies for his supposed knowledge spammed his tag nonstop, begging for defensive strategies. After stammering for ages, Zhao Tianba finally spilled the truth. All the journal says is the catastrophe. I don't know what the monsters even look like. Silence blanketed the chat for a heartbeat. Then a vicious flame war erupted instantly. Damn you, Zhao Tianba, you rotten bastard. I traded 50 stacks of lumber and 3 bottles of water for your fake intel, and this is all you've got? Scammer. Lowlife thief. Give back my foundation block. I needed it to expand my island and survive. I curse your entire bloodline, Zhao Tianba. May you die horribly. Everyone band together. Anyone buying your trades in the market is a spineless fool. We're doomed, utterly doomed. We don't know how to defend ourselves. All of us will perish on this pathetic island once the catastrophe hits. Despair and rage spread rampantly through the channel. Zhao Tianba attempted to snap back with petty insults at first, but was soon drowned out by thousands of furious messages, too terrified to send another word. Sitting inside his warm cabin, munching hot self-heating MRE, Suze watched the chat farce with a cold sneer. Fools stay fools, fighting among themselves with death breathing down their necks. None of them knew that once the first month passed and the system's newbie protection expired, their fishing rods would undergo a massive upgrade. Current maximum line length, 30 meters. Post-upgrade, 100 meters flat. Down in the 100-meter deep cloud sea depths, supply variety and quality would skyrocket dramatically. But first, they needed to survive the incoming tide. Just as Suze was about to close the channel and get back to work, a private message suddenly popped up. The sender was Wang Chong, whose avatar depicted a scrawny man with shifty, rat-like eyes. Big shot Suze, I just fished up an ultra-rare glowing stone. This has to be top-tier crafting material. I don't want much, just 3 bottles of purified water plus 2 cans of luncheon meat. And this glowing stone is all yours. Don't miss this chance, boss. Suze raised an eyebrow and opened the item screenshot the man had sent. It was an ordinary rock coated in some unknown fluorescent powder, crudely daubed. Smudged mud was even visible along its uneven edges where the coating hadn't been spread smooth. You think you can fool me with this trash? Do I look like I run a charity? A cold, vicious glint flashed across Suze's eyes. With deadly danger closing in, these people had completely thrown all morality out the window. They'd stoop to any despicable trick just to swindle food and water. If he didn't teach them a harsh lesson, more of these pests would keep pestering him nonstop. Without another word, Suze opened his inventory, took a screenshot of the stat panel for his tactical crossbow glinting with frigid metallic sheen, and sent it straight to the district group channel, tagging along a line of text. I'm a reasonable man, but my bolts are not. Anyone else who DMs me trying to scam supplies with worthless junk will get a personal lesson in manners from me once the tide passes. The second the screenshot hit the chat, the channel went dead silent, as if someone had choked every speaker's voice. A full 30 seconds passed before the entire chat exploded into chaos, messages scrolling so fast they blurred on screen. Holy hell, what am I seeing? A crossbow. This is actual modern weaponry. High-precision optical scope, alloy armor-piercing bolts. That firepower, one shot could punch straight through a human skull. He's insane, totally insane. We're still defending ourselves with sticks and stones while God Su pulls out heavy firepower? How are we even supposed to compete? Respect to Grandpa Su. May Grandpa Su live forever. Where's that idiot Wang Chong who tried to scam him? Get out here and kowtow for forgiveness. Whoa, that penetration power, those stats. This is the king of melee weapons. Anyone stupid enough to cross Su Zhe won't even know how they died. Wang Chong, the man who just tried to swindle water, stared at the screenshot in the channel in terror. His shoddy fishing rod slipped from his grasp and clattered to the mud, and a huge wet patch spread across the crotch of his pants. Hands shaking violently, he spammed desperate apology private messages to Su Zhe. He even dropped to his knees in the muck and banged his forehead against the ground. He did this a dozen times, terrified Su Zhe would hold a grudge. Su Zhe let out a cold scoff, ignored every private message, and closed the panel outright. His intimidation had worked. These petty crooks wouldn't dare harass him again until they figured out exactly what he was packing. Finally, some peace. Back to work. Su Zhe pushed open the wooden door and strode toward the fishing zone at the edge of his floating island against the howling gale. The wind raged so hard it nearly knocked him off his feet. Su Zhe used his entrenching tool to dig a pit in the dirt, wedging his feet firmly inside to steady himself before casting his fishing line far out into the churning, ash-gray cloud sea. Minutes ticked by one after another. Frigid dampness whipped on the gale, roaring around the floating island like hordes of invisible beasts. For full hours dragged on. The float tossed wildly in the wind, yet nothing tugged at the line once. Just as Su Zhe figured he'd catch nothing that day, the bamboo fishing rod in his hands suddenly lurched downward. The pull was not ferocious, yet unbelievably heavy, as if he'd hooked a massive block of pig iron. Got a bite. Su Zhe's gaze sharpened. He braced his core, gripped the rod handle tight, and hauled back with all his strength. The fishing line stretched taut, creaking loudly. Come up with me, Su Zhe roared, veins bulging on his forearms. He stumbled backward, leveraging his full body weight to yank upward hard. Splash! The murky gray clouds tore apart, and a square red crate went flying through the air before crashing heavily into the mud. Gasping for breath, Su Zhe hurried over. It was a crate crafted from heavy-duty waterproof material, marked with a stark white cross dead center. Medical supplies? Su Zhe's heart hammered wildly as he pried open the crate latches. Obtained. 1 first aid medical kit. First aid medical kit contents. 1 box high-purity broad-spectrum antibiotics. 1 box potent painkillers. 5 rolls sterile medical gauze. 1 bottle medical alcohol. 1 set surgical blades plus suturing thread and needles. Staring at the supplies inside, Su Zhe's breathing grew heavy. In this survival world where even a simple cold could kill you, medicine was priceless, 10,000 times more valuable than food or water. Ding. Host has acquired supplies. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You received 10 first aid medical kits. A brilliant flash of white light swept over him, and 10 identical red waterproof crates lined up neatly at his feet. Ha! This is amazing. Thrilled, Su Zhe slammed a fist against the wooden fence beside him. 10 medical kits meant 10 full boxes of antibiotics and 10 boxes of painkillers. With the apocalyptic tide fast approaching, these supplies were effectively 10 extra lives. As long as a monster didn't bite his head clean off instantly, he could survive even the most gruesome wounds. I've got all the supplies I need, maxed out defenses. Let's see what this so-called cloud sea tide really is. Su Zhe carefully carried all 10 medical kits back into his wooden cabin and stowed them safely away. He picked up his tactical crossbow, wiped the optical scope clean with the hem of his shirt, a ferocious glint in his eyes. The final day before the tide's arrival dawned. The entire cloud sea world had transformed completely. The pale gray cloud banks had turned pitch black as ink, as if the entire sky was collapsing, bearing down heavy on every survivor's head. The wind no longer merely howled. It shrieked like countless vengeful ghosts wailing right beside your ears. The floating island shuddered violently beneath the gale, threatening to break apart at any moment. Su Zhe stood by his cabin window, peering through the crack to watch the chaos outside. Suddenly his pupils constricted sharply. Vast swathes of dark green mist churned forth from the ink-black depths of the cloud sea. Thick and cloying, the mist reeked of sickening rot. Carried by the wind, it surged toward the floating islands like scores of venomous dragons baring their fangs and claws. Poison gas. Su Zhe's face paled instantly. He pulled up the district channel, and sure enough, the chat was in total pandemonium. Cough, 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 help. This mist is toxic. I inhaled a breath and my lungs feel like they're bursting. It burns. Where this green mist touched my skin, blisters sprouted all over. Someone help me. Does anyone have antidotes? I don't want to die. Cough. I'm coughing up blood. What hellish place is this? In barely 10 minutes, the regional survivor counter in the top right corner plummeted from over 7,000 to just above 6,000. The tide hasn't even fully hit yet, and the prelude alone is this horrific? Suze drew a sharp breath. Right then, a massive cloud of dark green toxic mist rode the gale straight for his floating island, seeping wildly through gaps in the wooden fence. Quick as a flash, Suze grabbed a tattered rag and stuffed every last crack in his cabin shut, sealing the poison gas out entirely. Instead of panicking, he stared at the roiling toxic mist outside, eyes lighting up with a sudden idea. Wait, this stuff's toxic, but at the end of the day, it's just another form of cloud mist. A wild epiphany struck Suze. He spun around to stare at the humming basic water purifier sitting in the cabin's corner. Basic water purifier converts any liquid or cloud mist into purified drinking water. Any cloud mist, that includes this poison fog. Suze slapped his thigh in excitement. What everyone else saw as a death sentence was an endless supply of clean water to him. Suze sprang into action at once. He slipped on the simple dust mask he'd gotten from a blind box earlier, took a deep breath, threw open the wooden door, and darted over to the purifier. Suck it all in. He cranked the purifier's intake valve to maximum capacity. Bzzzzz. The purifier let loose a deafening roar, its internal cloud filtration sand glowing brilliant blue nonstop. A ferocious suction force erupted from the intake vent. The dark green toxic mist rampaging across the floating island was dragged toward the machine, swirling into a tiny tornado that streamed unceasingly into the purifier. Glug glug, glug glug. Loud filtering sounds echoed from within the machine. Deadly toxins were trapped firmly by the filter sand, while pure water was rapidly separated out. Drip, drip, rush. In under 3 minutes, crystal clear, impurity-free purified water poured out of the spout below the purifier. Ha! It worked. Suze laughed in wild delight. He quickly lined up over a dozen empty plastic bottles beneath the spout to catch the water. The toxic mist thickened outside by the minute. Yet Suze's floating island stood as an isolated safe zone. Every wisp of poison fog drifting overhead was greedily swallowed by the purifier, turned into bottle after bottle of life-saving water. The district channel was drowning in despair by now. Someone save me. I'll trade every supply I own for just a breath of clean air. Where's Zhao Tianba? Weren't you all tough talk? Why aren't you saying anything? Did the poison get you too? I regret everything. Why didn't I stockpile lumber to build a cabin sooner? Listening to their wails, Suze sat in his warm cabin and simmered a rich tomato beef broth in an iron pot over the fire pit. He took a huge sip of the steaming soup and sighed contentedly. This was pure windfall profit. He did nothing but watch the purifier run non-stop the entire afternoon. The toxic mist only faded as dusk fell. His inventory now held a full 50 liters of purified water. 50 liters. In a world where every drop of water cost blood to obtain, this fortune was staggering beyond belief. I've got unlimited water now. Suze patted the plastic jug brimming with water in satisfaction. Night fell completely. The gale showed no sign of letting up. If anything, it raged harder. The cloud sea beyond the island was pitch black, impossible to see through. Only low rumbling echoes drifted up from the abyss below, as if a massive gate to hell was creaking open. Suze cocked his tactical crossbow, strapped his entrenching tool to his waist, and secured a high-intensity flashlight to his left arm with cloth strips. He dragged a wooden stool over to the dedicated firing slit cut into the cabin wall, his gaze cold as steel as he fixed it on the darkness outside. His fortifications were flawless, and he was in peak condition. Come on, then. Let me see exactly what this tide is capable of. Time ticked steadily closer to midnight. The entire cloud sea world fell eerily silent, nothing but the wind howling. Oppressive. A suffocating weight hung in the air. The second the system clock hit 12 midnight. Beep. A shrill, soul-rending crimson alarm blared inside every survivor's head. Global district announcement. The cloud sea tide has officially erupted. Warning. Cloud sea backflow. Acid rain descending. Abyssal creatures have awakened. Survive. That is your only objective. Boom. The instant the system alert faded, the floating island lurched violently, shaking so hard Suze nearly went flying off his stool. Shit, earthquake. Suze gripped the window frame tight to steady himself. He flicked on the high-powered flashlight strapped to his arm. A blinding white beam sliced through the dark, shining out over the cloud sea beyond the island. The sight before him made his pupils shrink down to pinpricks. The black cloud sea churning far below was surging upward like boiling water, flooding back toward the islands. Wave after wave of black mist crashed against the island's edges, sending up sprays of dark froth. Moments later, fine rain began to fall from the sky. The raindrops were not transparent. They glowed an unnatural pale yellow. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Where the acid droplets hit the cabin roof and wooden fence outside, white smoke billowed and corrosive hisses filled the air. Acid rain. This hellish weather leaves no room to breathe. Suze ground his teeth. Thankfully, he'd plastered every crack in the cabin shut with mud beforehand. If the acid seeped inside, it would eat straight through skin. Illuminated by the flashlight beam, countless thick shadowy shapes suddenly shot forth from the surging black cloud sea. They were no distinct monsters, twisted black vines of some unholy breed. Each vine was as thick as a human thigh, solid black, lined with blade-sharp barbs that whipped wildly in the wind like giant writhing tentacles. Crack, crack, crack. Several massive black vines lashed hard against the wooden fence, ringing Suze's island with terrifying force, splinters flying as the thick logs creaked under the blow. They're trying to drag the island down. Suze instantly grasped their motive. They weren't here to hunt humans. They sought to tear the entire floating island apart and drag everything on it down into the abyss. Scrape, scrape, scrape. More black vines crawled up over the island's rim, writhing with sentient purpose. They coiled tight around the wooden fence, squeezing hard to rip the post straight from the mud. You want to tear down my home? Over my dead body. Murderous intent flared in Suze's eyes. He raised his tactical crossbow, lining the optical scope up with the thickest vine within sight. Die. Suze squeezed the trigger hard. Twang. A dull boom echoed from the bowstring, and the alloy armor-piercing bolt cut straight through the acid rain. Squelch. Unstoppable penetration power unleashed. The bolt struck dead center of the vine, piercing clean through its thick trunk. Hiss. The vine let out an agonizing screech, thick reeking dark green sap gushing from the wound. It thrashed violently a few times before losing its grip on the fence and sliding off the island's edge into the depths of the cloud sea. It works. The crossbow's power cuts through their defenses. Suze's spirit soared. He stepped his foot into the cocking stirrup, drawing, knocking, aiming, and firing in rapid succession. Twang, twang, twang. Huddled at the narrow firing slit, Suze became a ruthless killing machine. One alloy bolt after another screamed through the rain, precisely cutting down every black vine that tried to breach his barriers. The ground outside the fence was stained dark green with the vines oozing sap. Yet there were far too many vines. An endless nest of them seemed to lie hidden deep within the cloud sea. Every wave he shot back was replaced by more, thicker vines surging forward nonstop. Crack. A sharp splintering sound cut through the chaos. A section of wooden fence on the island's right finally gave way under the pull of over a dozen black vines, ripped clean from the mud as splintered timber flew everywhere. Damn it, Suze cursed, a vicious glint flashing in his gaze. With the fence no longer blocking them, the python-like black vines flooded through the breach like unchained floodwater, surging onto the island. They writhed and slithered across the muddy ground, their razor barbs gouging deep trenches in the dirt as they headed straight for the cabin at the island's center. Faced with his broken defenses, Suze did not rush out to fight them recklessly. Hand-to-hand combat against painless plant creatures in the raging wind and searing acid rain was nothing short of suicide. He quickly stowed his crossbow, lowered the firing slit's shutter just enough to leave a narrow aiming gap, hunkering down deep inside the cabin. Come ahead. Taste the welcome gift I've prepared for you all. Suze sneered, his gaze locked on the vines closing in fast. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter. Just as the leading thick vines reached the cabin's perimeter, the frontmost several lurched downward sharply, losing all balance and plummeting. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy crashing sounds echoed one after another. That circular trench had been dug in advance by Suze. The black vines charged forward far too fast to break, tumbling into the 1-meter-deep trench like dumplings being dropped into boiling water. And lining the trench floor were countless sharpened wooden stakes, sticking upward in dense clusters. Squelch, squelch. Sharp, piercing sounds echoed as the pointed stakes skewered the bodies of the black vines. Dark green, stinking venom gushed from their wounds, mixing with pale yellow acid rain falling from the sky to pool into a nauseating toxic sludge at the bottom of the ditch. Hiss! The vines trapped in the trench let out shrill, beast-like screeches. They thrashed and writhed wildly against the narrow earthen floor, trying to tear free of the wooden stakes by brute force. But the more they struggled, the deeper the stakes drove into their flesh. Some vines were pinned flat to the mud by multiple spikes, unable to move an inch. Perfect! Suze's eyes lit up, a surge of exhilaration rushing through him. This forward-thinking trench trap had worked flawlessly, neutralizing the first wave of the fiercest assault entirely. Yet Suze knew better than to celebrate just yet. More black vines kept surging through the breach without end. The trench had limited space. Once filled with the dead vines ahead, the following vines would simply trample their fallen kin and cross the defensive line. Strike while they're down. Suze instantly raised his tactical crossbow, lining the optical sight up on the writhing vines below, those trying to scramble back up the trench walls. Twang, twang, twang. Dull, vibrating hums of the bowstring reverberated non-stop inside the wooden cabin. Suze fought like a cold, unfeeling sniper, his hands steady as bedrock. Alloy armor-piercing bolts carrying lethal kinetic energy shot straight down into the trench with every pull of the trigger. Squelch! A vine that had just poked its tip over the trench rim took a bolt straight to its core, snapping clean in two before collapsing limply back down. Squelch! Another bolt pinned a vine attempting to coil around the cabin's foundation fast to the earthen trench wall. Suze fired at blistering speed. The 200 alloy bolts granted by his tenfold critical strike buff gave him unlimited ammunition to keep firing. His precise, controlled shots pinned all vines pouring through the right breach firmly within the trench, none able to cross the line. Just as Suze thought he had stabilized the situation, the wind suddenly intensified to a ferocious gale. Whoosh! Storm winds laced with concentrated acid rain tore violently at the wooden palisades lining the island's left flank and rear. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The corrosive hiss of acid rain grew louder and more constant. Peering through the firing slit, Suze saw thick white smoke billowing off the palisades. The thick round logs were pockmarked and eaten away by the rain, brittle and fragile. Creak, creak. Battered by wind and acid rain alike, the fences groaned under unbearable strain, teetering on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, the trench outside the cabin was already half filled with dark green venom and vine carcasses. Damn it, durability's dropping way too fast. Suze ground his teeth, beads of cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. The real all-out defensive battle was only just beginning. Boom. A low, muffled thunderclap exploded deep within the roiling black cloud sea, as if sounding the horn for a full-scale onslaught. With the thunder, the acid rain plummeted down in far greater volume, shifting from a sparse drizzle to a torrential downpour. A curtain of pale yellow rain shrouded the entire floating island, filling the air with a choking stench of sulfur and rot. Crash! Crash! The wooden palisades on the left and rear finally reached their breaking point. Eroded relentlessly by acid rain and pummeled by gale-force winds, huge sections crashed down in heaps, reduced to splintered rotting timber. The defensive line had completely crumbled. Countless black vines swarmed toward the island from all directions, like sharks catching the scent of blood. They climbed over the carcass-choked trench, thrashing their twisting tendrils as they lunged at the isolated wooden cabin. Thud! An abnormally thick mutant black vine, as wide as a wooden bucket, slammed hard against the cabin wall. The sturdy cabin shook violently, mud packed into its seams showering down in clumps. The mutant vine then snaked rapidly up the wall, coiling tight around one of the cabin's main load-bearing support pillars. Crack! A shrill squeal of compressed timber rang out. Beneath the vine's crushing constriction force, the pillar began to bend slightly, jagged cracks splitting its surface. This beast is trying to tear my house right out of the ground. Suze's eyes blazed red. This cabin was his last safe haven. If it was destroyed, he would be fully exposed to the acid rain and monsters, certain death. The cramped cabin left no room to wield the tactical crossbow properly. While the bolts packed strong piercing power, they could not deliver an instant kill against such bucket-thick mutant vines. To hell with it, I'm fighting back. Suze tossed the crossbow aside in one sharp motion, yanking the heavy multifunctional military entrenching tool from his waist. He quickly slipped on a dust mask, zipped his windbreaker all the way to the collar, drew a deep breath, and kicked the wooden door wide open in one fierce blow. Wind laced with acid rain slammed straight into his face. The second he stepped outside, Several drops of acid rain splattered onto the back of his hand. Hiss! A searing burning pain shot through his skin. Thin white smoke curled off the spot, which instantly swelled into blisters. Suze ignored the agony, his gaze sharp and feral as a wolf, locked firmly on the mutant vine wrapped around the support pillar. "Get off my house!" Suze roared, pushing off with all his leg strength and charging forward. He gripped the entrenching tool's handle with both hands, twisted his waist, and using the momentum of his sprint, brought the high-strength alloy blade crashing down hard into the vine. Squelch! The razor-sharp blade sliced through the vine's tough outer skin like tofu, sinking deep into its fleshy core. Hiss! The mutant vine let out a piercing shriek, gushing torrents of dark green venom from its wound. The venom splashed onto Suze's windbreaker, hissing corrosively and burning multiple holes straight through the fabric. Still not cut through? One more strike. Veins bulged on Suze's arms as he wrenched the shovel free, swinging a heavy horizontal slash backhanded. Snap! This blow severed the vine's internal fibrous tissue clean through. The bucket-thick mutant vine split into two jagged halves. The section coiled around the pillar slid limply down, while the other half recoiled frantically back into the dark cloud sea, as if electrocuted. Seamlessly switching from long-range sniper to close-quarters brawler, Suze pushed his combat capabilities to their absolute limit. A surge of adrenaline dulled the burn of the acid rain temporarily. He swung the entrenching tool, slaughtering vines wildly all around the cabin. One sweeping chop split a sneaking vine straight down the middle. A quick backhand slash severed the tip of another encroaching tendril. Rotten venom mixed with pale yellow acid rain streamed down Suze's cheeks. He stood like a blood-soaked war god guarding the cabin doorway, no vine able to break past his line. 5 full minutes passed before the surrounding vines seemed cowed by his ferocity. Their attacks slowed drastically, and they eventually retreated back into the abyss. Suze gasped for ragged breaths, leaning his weight on the entrenching tool as he stood mired in mud. He glanced down at his arms and thighs. His windbreaker was riddled with holes eaten away by acid rain and toxic venom. Exposed skin was covered in swollen blisters and burn marks, a blazing wave of pain crashing over him. Shit, that hurts like hell. He dared not linger outside any longer, spinning to retreat into the cabin and propping the wooden door shut tight with a thick log. He had barely sat down to catch his breath when his gaze drifted inadvertently to the bottom right corner of his vision. His heart clenched tight at what he saw. The icon for the regional chat channel flashed violently, glowing a blood-red crimson. Gritting his teeth against the all-consuming pain racking his body, Suze dragged a red first aid medical kit out from the corner. He bit down to pop the latches open, pulling out a bottle of sterile purified water and several rolls of sterile bandages. First, he carefully rinsed the acid rain burns on his arms and thighs. Every splash brought a searing stab of pain that made him suck in sharp breaths. Once clean, he tore open several strong painkillers and swallowed them dry before wrapping his wounds tightly layer upon layer with sterile bandages. Thank God for the medical supplies from the tenfold critical strike buff. If not for them, infection from these acid burns alone would finish me off. Suze thought to himself in quiet relief as he finished dressing his wounds. The painkillers soon kicked in, dulling the burning agony. Leaning back against the wooden wall, Suze activated the blood-red regional channel icon with a flick of his mind. The second he opened the channel, a suffocating wave of despair washed over him. Help! Somebody help me. My floating island's tearing apart. Those black vines flipped all the soil up. I've nowhere left to hide. Someone save me. It burns. This rain is poison. Raindrops hit my eyes. I'm blind. I can't see anything. Aya! Monsters! There are monsters beneath the cloud sea. I leaned over the edge a minute ago. I swear I saw it. Deep, far down, a single vertical red eye as big as a truck flickered. It's watching us. We're just food to it. This voice message about the giant eye trembled with unbridled terror, sending a chill crawling up Suze's spine. A vertical eye the size of a truck? How colossal must that creature's true form be? Suze drew a deep breath to calm his shock. He recalled the warning from the drift bottle. Survive 1 full month, and your fishing rod will upgrade, allowing you to fish the deep cloud sea hundreds of meters below. It was clear now that even 30 meters up was plagued by deadly vines and acid rain. The abyss 100 meters down must hold far more horrifying creatures. Yet danger always walked hand in hand with reward. The resources down there would surely dwarf what was available on the surface many times over. Screams continued flooding the channel, but the most chilling message came from Zhao Tianba, the once arrogant tyrant of the chat. A 1-minute voice message sat pinned at the very top. Suze, Brother Sue, I was wrong. I'll give you all my supplies. Just tell me how to defend myself. The vines are climbing up. My shoddy cabin can't hold them back. They've wrapped around my legs. I'll help. Don't drag me down. I don't want to die. Save. Gurgle gurgle. The audio cut off abruptly with sickening bone-crunching sounds and drowning gurgles, falling into total silence. Zhao Tianba's avatar faded to gray, the marker of the dead. This man who had swindled and conned countless others to hoard piles of supplies had built no effective fortifications at all. Mutant black vines had dragged him and his ramshackle cabin straight into the abyss, leaving nothing but a mangled corpse. Suze stared coldly at Zhao Tianba's gray avatar, feeling no flicker of pity. In this cruel world, fools only ever met one fate. He shifted his gaze to the top right corner of his vision. Current regional survivors, 3,892/10,000. Christ, Suze gasped in shock. Less than an hour of the tidal surge had claimed over 2,000 lives. The survivor count had plummeted below 4,000. The brutal elimination rate was like a meat grinder grinding down the survivors. Despair spread thick through the channel, a stark contrast to Suze's relative safety. He sat inside his sturdy cabin with food and water in stock, maxed out defenses, even enough leisure to watch the chaos unfold in the chat. This steady, unshakable sense of security forged through careful preparation was something those clinging to life on the brink of death could never comprehend. Just then, the noise outside shifted abruptly. The black vines lashing the cabin seemed to retreat on some unspoken command, flowing backward like a receding tide. The howling wind died down, and the corrosive acid rain ceased entirely. An eerie silence blanketed the entire floating island. The tidal surge is over? Suze frowned, not relaxing his guard for a single second. The system announcement had warned abyss creatures were growing active. Vines alone could never be the full threat. Sure enough, the next instant, a dense, buzzing hum echoed up from the churning black cloud sea. Bzz, bzz. The sound resembled millions of flies beating their wings at once, dull and grating, carrying a sickly fetid wind as it drew rapidly closer to the island. What the hell is that? Every muscle in Suze's body tensed rigidly. He snatched the high-intensity flashlight strapped to his left arm, shining its beam out through the firing slit into the blackness beyond. The sight that met his eyes made his pupils shrink sharply, his stomach churning violently. Beneath the harsh white beam, a pitch-black swarm rose up from the depths of the cloud sea. It was no cloud at all, countless fist-sized grotesque flying insects, packed tight together. Their bodies were a sickly dark red, bloated like blood-swollen leeches. They had no legs, but two pairs of translucent thin wings sprouted from their backs. They hovered in dense, swirling clusters, beating their wings fast enough to produce that skin-crawling buzz. Damn it, it's a bug plague. Suze cursed, yanking the firing slit's cover closed tight, leaving only a razor-thin crack to observe outside. Thud thud thud. The next second, the overwhelming insect swarm crashed into the cabin's outer walls like a raging storm. Dense, muffled impacts boomed like someone hammering a giant war drum, the whole cabin trembling faintly under the sheer force. Suze braced his weight against the wooden door, listening to the scraping sounds outside. Instead of falling off after slamming into the planks, the insects clamped their mouths onto the wood with rows of tiny, razor-sharp, serrated jaws. Creak, creak. Horrifying gnawing sounds echoed from every direction. Thousands upon thousands of insects chewed in unison, stripping layers of wood from the cabin's outer walls before his very eyes. These beasts are eating my house down. Suze's face paled with alarm. Earlier, to block wind and acid rain, he had sealed every crack in the cabin tight with mud mixed with water, and that quick decision had saved his life now. If any gaps remained, these fist-sized bugs would have flooded inside like a river, gnawing him down to bone. But the mud seal would not hold forever. The cabin's durability plummeted rapidly beneath the swarm's relentless gnawing. Suze could even see thin spots on the planks, faint red light seeping through from outside. I have to fight back, can't let them chew straight through the walls. Suze grabbed his tactical crossbow, only to hurl it down in frustration a heartbeat later. Physical bolts were useless against such a dense swarm. One bolt could only pierce 2 or 3 bugs at most, yet thousands swarmed outside. Even firing all 200 bolts would barely make a dent. As for the entrenching tool, charging out to fight hand-to-hand was a suicide play. A dozen bugs clinging to his body would drain his blood dry in moments. The threat had shifted entirely from strength-based physical vines to a sheer numbers environmental disaster. Oppression weighed heavy, as if death's scythe already rested against his throat. Area of effect damage. I need area of effect weapons. Suze's mind raced a mile a minute, his eyes darting wildly across the cramped cabin. Purified water? Useless. Can't drown them. Entrenching tool? Worthless. Medical kits? Even more useless. Suddenly his gaze locked onto a towering stack of camouflage cardboard boxes in the corner. 200 high-calorie self-heating military field rations, gifted by his tenfold critical strike buff. Suze's eyes lit up, a plan sparking in his mind. Self-heating rations, heating packs. Quicklime. In his old world, the core components of self-heating food heat packs were quicklime and aluminium powder. When quicklime mixed with water, a violent chemical reaction erupted, releasing massive amounts of high-temperature steam in an instant. If water was added inside a sealed container, the trapped expanding gas would rupture the vessel and trigger a violent explosion. Physical attacks won't work? Then I'll hit them with chemical warfare. Suze lunged straight for the pile of field rations. Rip, rip. His hands moved at lightning speed as he tore open ration after ration. Ignoring the dehydrated beef and compressed biscuits inside, he ripped out every white non-woven fabric heating pack. 10 packs, 20, 30. The massive stockpile granted by his tenfold critical strike buff gave him free rein to burn through supplies without hesitation. Survival rations others would hoard and ration sparingly were ruthlessly pulled apart here. He grabbed several large, empty plastic water bottles, tore open the quicklime heating packs, and dumped all their pale gray powder into the bottles in one go. Each bottle held enough quicklime to fill 5 or 6 heating packs. Water. Pour water in. Suze grabbed a bottle of purified water, took a deep breath, and his gaze sharpened with total focus. He twisted open the water bottle, aimed it at one plastic jar stuffed full of quicklime, and poured half the bottle's contents inside in one swift motion. Then, with the lightning-fast reflexes of someone who'd spent 20 years single, he screwed the jar's lid on as tight as it would go. Sizz. Barely after the lid sealed shut, violent boiling erupted inside the plastic jar instantly. Quicklime reacting with water unleashed terrifying blistering heat. The jar expanded and warped visibly before his eyes, and searing warmth seeped straight through his gloves into his palms. Take this. Suze threw open the firing slit's cover, braving swarms of venomous insects surging in from outside. He hurled the homemade bomb, now stretched to its breaking point, hard into the densest cluster of bugs hovering midair. The second the bomb left his grasp, Suze slammed the cover shut and clamped both hands over his ears. Boom! A deafening detonation ripped through the air above the wooden cabin. The sealed plastic jar could no longer withstand the catastrophic internal pressure and shattered completely. Scalding steam, bloated from thermal expansion, mixed with clouds of boiling quicklime powder, billowing outward through the heart of the insect horde like a volcanic eruption. Squeal, squeal, squeal. Shrill, agonized screeches filled the sky at once. How could those thin-winged venomous bugs possibly endure such a crude chemical weapon? The boiling steam cooked their internal organs instantly, and any flecks of quicklime dust landing on their damp exoskeletons triggered a second wave of corrosive burns. Crackle, pop, crackle. Hundreds upon hundreds of charred, half-scorched insects plummeted from the sky like dark red hailstones, crashing into the mud surrounding the cabin and releasing a sickening stench of burnt rot. It worked. Ha ha. Suze's eyes lit up with wild excitement. He didn't pause for a second and repeated the exact same process again. Pour water, screw the lid tight, throw. Boom, boom, boom. A string of explosions echoed across the floating island. Massive plumes of white superheated steam, laced with lime dust, bloomed like deadly flowers amid the black swarms of bugs. Every blast wiped out a huge patch of the insect horde. The bugs that had been gnawing relentlessly at the wooden cabin were terrified by the sudden, ferocious heat and explosions. Their ravenous, chewing noises fell silent. After hurling more than a dozen quicklime bombs in succession, the temperature around the cabin had jumped over 10 degrees. The air reeked of harsh lime and roasted insects. The surviving bugs finally realized the tough little shelter was no easy target. Letting out a chaotic buzz, they fled in all directions like a receding tide, scurrying back into the shadowy depths of the sea of clouds. Huff, huff. Suze leaned against the wooden wall, gasping for air as sweat soaked through the back of his shirt. Staring at the carpet of insect corpses outside, a triumphant grin tugged at his lips. First the strangling vine onslaught, then the ravenous bug swarm. Relying on unyielding courage and stockpiled supplies multiplied tenfold by his critical hit system, he'd weathered 2 lethal assaults single-handedly. But the smile on Suze's face froze before it could fully spread. A steady, rhythmic tremor suddenly rumbled up through the floating island beneath his feet. Thud, thud, thud. The sound resembled some colossal creature climbing upward step by step from the clouds below the island. Every vibration sent a sharp jolt through Suze's heart. Damn it! When will this hell end? Suze gritted his teeth, his eyes locked rigidly on the island's edge where the tremors originated. He snatched up his tactical crossbow off the ground and drew the string to full tension. A cold, alloy armor-piercing bolt rested steady in the firing groove. The beam of his high-intensity flashlight pinned down that stretch of shoreline. If any monster dared show its head, he would pull the trigger without hesitation, blasting a gaping hole straight through its skull. The rumbling drew closer, growing more frequent, as if death itself was pounding furiously at his door. Suze held his breath entirely. Cold sweat dripped down his cheeks and splattered into the muddy ground. He could even feel the earth beneath him bulge slightly. Something massive was about to burst forth at any moment. Crash! With one final low, thunderous boom, dirt at the island's edge erupted, sending mud and rock fragments flying everywhere. A towering mass hurtled upward from the depths of the sea of clouds with a howl of wind, slamming heavily against the trench Suze had dug earlier, letting out a deafening metallic clang. Suze's finger tensed hard against the trigger, nearly loosing the bolt. But when he focused his gaze, he froze stock still. This was no snarling, terrifying beast, nor a scaled tentacle monster. It was an enormous metal treasure chest, over half a man tall and 2 meters long. Its surface was crusted over with black cloud barnacles and covered in faded scratches, reeking of a thick, abyssal rot, looking like some ancient relic left dormant on the seabed for 100 years. Before Suze could recover from this shocking twist, a cold, shrill scarlet system alert blared inside every survivor's mind, making their eardrums throb. Global announcement. The first cloud tide has officially concluded. Warning. The reverse cloud current has receded. Abyssal creatures have retreated into hibernation. System notice. The second cloud tide will arrive in 1 month. Abyssal beasts will grow far more ferocious then. All survivors must strive to stay alive, upgrade your fishing rods, and venture deeper into the sea of clouds. As the system's voice faded, the howling winds that had threatened to tear the sky apart died instantly. The highly corrosive pale yellow acid rain vanished without a trace. The entire sea of clouds sank back into its lifeless gray haze, as if the catastrophic ordeal had never happened at all. It's over, it's actually over. Suze exhaled a deep breath of stale air. His frayed nerves relaxed all at once, and he collapsed heavily onto the mud, utterly drained. Glancing at the gigantic metal chest before him, he finally understood the source of those terrifying tremors. Those rumblings hadn't been monster footsteps climbing up. The powerful reverse cloud current left behind by the receding tide had dragged this tidal relic chest up from the deep cloud layers and deposited it on the floating island. Suze burst into loud laughter that echoed across the empty island. Ha ha, I survived. To hell with this stupid tide and those mutated black vines. All of you can rot. After releasing all his pent-up stress, Suze scrambled back to his feet, his eyes blazing with greed as he stared at the massive metal chest. This was a gift left by the receding tide. Even a fool could tell it would be stuffed with top-tier supplies. He pulled his multi-purpose entrenching tool from his waist, strode to the chest, and jammed the sharp blade deep into the seam along its lid. Open up. The muscles in Suze's arms bulged, veins popping as he bore down hard on the shovel. A shrill screech of scraping metal rang out as the chest's lock snapped clean off under brute force. Clang, the heavy metal lid flew open. No blueprints or fancy gimmicky items filled the chest. Instead, 2 types of basic yet incredibly valuable building materials were stacked neatly inside. Acquired. Premium pre-cut stone bricks times 100 acquired. Rot-resistant planks times 100 premium pre-cut stone brick, specially refined by system craftsmanship. Extremely high hardness, built with interlocking grooves that fit seamlessly without cement, unbreakable. Rot-resistant plank, thick lumber soaked in special preservative serum. Insect-proof, moisture-resistant, and able to withstand moderate acid rain corrosion. The perfect construction material for shelters. Suze's eyes lit up brilliantly at the sight of the contents. What did he lack most right now? Defensive building materials. His rickety old wooden cabin had been ravaged by acid rain and bugs, riddled with holes and on the verge of collapse. With these premium supplies, he could build a genuine impenetrable fortress. At that moment, the emotionless mechanical system tone echoed in his mind as scheduled. Ding. Host resource acquisition detected. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. Acquired premium pre-cut stone bricks times 1,000. Congratulations, host. Acquired rot-resistant planks times 1,000. The next second, blinding white light flashed wildly across the floating island. When the glow faded, a towering mound of stone bricks and planks materialized directly in front of Suze. A full 1,000 heavy solid stone bricks, alongside 1,000 planks carrying a faint medicinal preservative scent, covered nearly half the small island's surface. I've struck it rich. This is the real jackpot. Suze pumped his fist in wild excitement. With this mountain of construction materials, he could properly plan his living space from now on. Moreover, the system announcement had explicitly mentioned upgrading fishing rods. He clearly remembered intel from drift bottles. Basic fishing rods only reached 30 meters into shallow cloud layers. Once upgraded to 100 meters, the supplies he could haul up would see an astronomical leap in quality. I've got roughly 20 days left until I can upgrade my rod. Ambitious glint flickered in Suze's eyes. The morning after the tide lingered with faint reeks of acid and burnt rot hanging in the air. Suze didn't rush to start construction immediately. Instead, he pulled up the regional chat channel in the bottom right of his vision. He wanted to see how many survivors remained after that meat grinder disaster. The second the panel opened, a blood-red number in the corner stabbed straight into his sight. Current regional survivor count, 3,102/10,000 hiss. Suze gasped sharply, a chill crawling over his scalp. Out of 10,000 people in this zone, more than half had perished in a single night. Nearly 7,000 living souls had vanished without a trace into the bottomless sea of clouds. How many lives had been lost across the entire world? Suze dared not even imagine. The regional chat channel hummed with none of its usual chatter, filled only with cries of despair. Wah, I made it out alive. I actually survived, but acid rain ate through my leg. The flesh rotted down to bone. Someone please help me. It was horrific. Did anyone else hear it last night? Right before the tide ended, there was this massive crunching noise from deep in the clouds, bones being crushed to splinters. Something colossal down there was eating everyone who fell. I heard it too. I heard the giant beast crawling. Sounded like a train rumbling beneath the clouds. I never even saw what it looked like, but I pissed myself in terror. I'd rather starve than lower my line again. My cabin's completely destroyed, all my supplies corroded away by acid rain. I'm sleeping in mud now. I'll work like a slave for anyone who can spare me a sip of water. After skimming the terrified pleas flooding the chat, Suze closed the panel coldly. He knew better than anyone. In this dog-eat-dog world, sympathy was worthless trash. He'd caught faint rumblings of that hundreds-meter-long creature crawling last night, proof that terrifying leviathans capable of crushing them with ease lurked far below the 30-meter cloud layer. No time to rest. I need to start rebuilding at once. Suze slapped his cheeks to shake off exhaustion and focus himself. Grabbing his entrenching tool, he walked over to his hole-ridden wooden cabin. The structure had burned through its last shred of durability during last night's bug swarm and acid rain, its walls thin as tissue paper. Without a shred of nostalgia, Suze swung the shovel and tore the ramshackle hut down in minutes, reducing it to a pile of scrap lumber. After clearing a wide-open plot of land, he hauled over the premium stone bricks multiplied by his tenfold critical hit. Each brick weighed dozens of pounds, smoothly polished with precision-cut interlocking edges. Shirtless, Suze hauled the heavy bricks one by one to the foundation, slotting them together perfectly like building blocks. Click, click. Sharp, crisp sounds echoed as the bricks locked into place. No cement, no tedious measuring, simple, brutal efficiency. Suze labored tirelessly like an engine, pouring out buckets of sweat. In just 2 hours, a solid stone wall 2 meters tall and half a meter thick rose from the ground. At this thickness, not even bugs or mutated black vines will stand a chance of breaking through. Suze patted the rigid stone wall with satisfaction, cool solidity meeting his palm. With the outer walls finished, he moved on to roofing and interior lining. He fetched the rot-resistant planks, cut them down to size with his tactical dagger and shovel, then layered them across the stone wall's top to build a sloped, sturdy roof. To stop rain leakage, he packed mud and wood shavings into every gap between planks. Finally, he nailed a full layer of preservative planks along the inner stone walls to block the cold seeping from the rock. A semi-fortress of stone and timber, 5 square meters in size, now stood tall at the center of the floating island, utterly unbreakable. It blocked wind and rain entirely, and its heavy stone walls wrapped him in unmatched security. Even after finishing the main structure, Suze did not stop working. Shovel in hand, He headed to the island's edge to repair the defensive trenches damaged the previous night. He ripped out all splintered wooden palisades, sharpened thick new timber stakes, and drove them deep into the mud. Next, he jumped down into the circular trench, cleared out tangled vine debris and insect carcasses, and tossed everything into the sea of clouds. He carved hundreds more sharp wooden spikes and jammed them point up across the entire trench floor. By the time he finished all preparations, dusk had fallen. Dragging his exhausted body, Suze stepped into his brand new stone timber fortress. He shut the thick, rot-proof wooden door, and nearly all wind noise vanished instantly. The fortress interior was spacious, with not a single drafty crack. He collapsed onto the floor, struck flint to light a small fire, tore open a self-heating military ration pack, and poured in purified water. Minutes later, rich savory steam curled from a hot dehydrated beef rice meal. Suze shoveled mouthfuls of rice greedily, feeling warmth spread through his stomach from the high-calorie food, and sighed in pure relief. This is what living actually feels like. Staring at the unyielding stone walls, Suze's sense of safety peaked completely. If he could endure the days ahead and upgrade his fishing rod, he would finally be able to explore the deeper, far richer, more mysterious cloud layers below. Just as Suze finished eating and settled in for a long sleep inside his new fortress, that shrill scarlet system alert blared in his mind once more. Global announcement. Severe climate shift across the sea of clouds. A 7-day extreme cold period has begun. Warning. Ambient temperature will plummet to minus 20 degrees Celsius immediately. All survivors must secure warmth at once, or freeze to death. Damn it. This godforsaken place never lets anyone catch their breath. Suze shot straight up off the ground, cursing under his breath. The second the system announcement ended, temperatures outside the island plummeted at an absurd rate. The previously mild air transformed into a piercing wind stinging with ice shards in an instant. Even inside the fortress, Suze could clearly hear the creak of ice forming on the wooden palisades outside. Every breath he exhaled bloomed into a thick, white fog mid-air. He still wore the tattered windbreaker eaten full of holes by last night's acid rain. Frigid wind cut through every tear, making him shiver violently, his teeth chattering nonstop. He quickly pulled up the regional chat channel, which had devolved into total chaos as expected. Help! It's freezing. The wind cuts like blades. I can't feel my hands or feet anymore. I don't have a cabin, barely any clothes. Someone save me. I don't want to freeze to death out here. This is madness. Some fool nearby burned his fishing rod just to make a fire. Does he want to die out here for good? Burning a rod's nothing. I incinerated all the rotten shoes and driftwood I fished up last night, but the fire's far too weak to keep me warm. Anyone with thick coats? I'll trade all my food and water for them. Staring at the desperate wails flooding the chat channel, Suze knew this frigid spell would be yet another brutal culling. Anyone without shelter or warm supplies would never survive the night. I can't just sit here waiting to die. I need to fish for warm gear right now. Gritting his teeth against the piercing cold, Suze shoved open the wooden door of his fortress and bolted outside. The world beyond had turned into a frozen hellscape. A thin sheet of ice crystals even coated the gray-white cloud sea. Frigid gales whipped shards of ice that stung sharply against his face. Battling the raging wind, Suze trudged to the floating islet's edge. His hands were nearly numb from the bitter chill, yet he gripped the fishing rod tightly and cast the baited iron hook into the ice-cold cloud sea. Time dragged on, every second pure torment for Suze. Hoarfrost crusted his eyebrows and hair. His legs lost all sensation, and only sheer iron will kept him rooted in place. Give me something, damn it, he roared inwardly. Just as he neared his breaking point, ready to retreat to the fortress and huddle by the fire, the float on the cloud surface plunged downward hard. The tug was gentle but steady. Got a catch. A surge of adrenaline shot through Suze. He strained hard to haul the bamboo pole upward. Splash! A black burlap sack and an army green waterproof bundle flew onto the islet, crashing onto the ice-frozen dirt. Suze stumbled over with numb hands and tore the package open without delay. Acquired. Premium smokeless anthracite coal, 50 kilograms acquired. Military-grade polar sleeping bag, times 1 premium smokeless anthracite coal. Burns for an extremely long time with high calorific value. It produces no smoke or toxic fumes while burning, making it the perfect heating fuel for enclosed spaces. Military-grade polar sleeping bag, crafted from top-tier aerogel thermal insulation. It retains the human body's core temperature even in extreme 40 degrees Celsius environments, lightweight and comfortable. Overjoyed at the stats of these two items, Su Zhe's eyes welled up, yet his tears froze into tiny ice shards the second they left his eyes. Ding. Supplies detected. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations to host. Acquired premium smokeless anthracite coal, 500 kilograms. Congratulations to host. Acquired military-grade polar sleeping bag times 10. A blinding flash of white light erupted, and a mountain of black coal half a ton heavy materialized right before Su Zhe's feet. Beside it sat 10 thick, warm polar sleeping bags stacked neatly in rows. Ha! Heaven won't let me perish. Su Zhe let out a wild laugh, grabbed a massive chunk of anthracite and one sleeping bag, rushed back into the stone and timber fortress, and slammed the wooden door shut tight. He stacked spare stone bricks into a large fire pit at the center of the fortress, smashed the coal into pieces and tossed them inside, then lit it with flint and wood shavings. Premium anthracite had a low ignition point. Before long, orange flames roared to life in the pit. This coal lived up to its reputation, no acrid smoke, and it radiated an intense, comforting heat. In barely 10 minutes, the temperature inside the fortress skyrocketed. The stone walls trapped warmth perfectly, transforming the space that had once been an ice cellar into a warm spring haven. Su Zhe stripped off his tattered windbreaker, bare-chested as he sat beside the fire pit. The warm flames seared his skin, and he nearly moaned from pure bliss. Thoroughly thawed, he spread the military polar sleeping bag across the floor and slipped inside. The fabric was impossibly soft, its inner thermal lining locking in his body heat. Wrapped in that cocoon of warmth, he almost forgot the brutal 20 degrees Celsius wasteland outside. A frigid spell? That's all it's got. Lying in the sleeping bag, Su Zhe watched the dancing flames in the fire pit with a satisfied grin. While others burned their own clothes just to stay alive, he'd already secured unlimited warmth. For nearly every survivor in the district, the first night of the frigid spell was an endless, despairing nightmare. For Su Zhe, however, it was the soundest sleep he'd ever had, cradled by the dual comfort of the polar sleeping bag and anthracite fire pit. Early the next morning, Su Zhe climbed out of the sleeping bag and stretched lazily. The fortress still hovered around a cozy 20 degrees Celsius, so warm he barely wanted to move. He cracked the door open a sliver to peek outside. The entire floating islet was buried under thick snow and ice, howling winds tearing through the air, a post-apocalyptic winter wasteland. Thank God I harvested all the vegetables from the planting plot yesterday, otherwise they'd all freeze solid in the dirt. Su Zhe walked to the fortress corner and smiled contentedly at the mountain of vegetables piled there. The planting plot, nourished by system-enriched soil and pure mineral water, grew crops at an absurdly accelerated rate. All the cabbages and tomatoes had fully ripened before the temperature plummeted. He'd reaped over a dozen giant green cabbages as big as wash basins, plus dozens of plump, juicy red tomatoes. He'd hauled every vegetable inside the fortress, then planted newly harvested seeds in indoor planters repurposed from crates, setting them near the fire pit to maintain a steady warm temperature. Su Zhe rinsed 2 tomatoes with purified water and bit into them raw like fruit. Sweet, tart juice burst across his tongue, replenishing the vitamins his body craved. Full and refreshed, he grew bored and opened the district chat channel. After a single night of brutal cold, the survivor count had plummeted yet again, dropping below 3,000. The channel overflowed with desperate final messages and frantic pleas for aid. Amid all the gloom, one out-of-place post caught Su Zhe's eye. The sender was Lu Chong, whose profile picture featured a shifty-eyed young man. "Guys, we're saved. I struck insane luck and fished up a warm supplies blind box." Lu Chong spammed the channel nonstop, his tone feverish as if delivering a rallying speech. "This blind box holds over a dozen thick army coats, plus 3 large iron stoves for burning firewood. If you hand over enough food and water, I'll distribute all these warm supplies for free and lead us through this crisis together." At those words, survivors drowning in despair latched onto this last lifeline, and the entire channel erupted in chaos. "Brother Lu, Grandpa Lu, please spare me 1 army coat. I'm freezing stiff. I've got 2 black bread loaves, all of them for you. I'll trade 3 bottles of murky water for an iron stove. Brother Lu Chong, you're a living saint. Everyone send your supplies to Brother Lu. With coats and stoves, we can survive." Watching survivors rush to trade away their provisions, Su Zhe's brows furrowed faintly. A warm supplies blind box. Would this hellish world hand out over a dozen army coats and 3 full iron stoves so generously? Just as Su Zhe voiced his doubts, a private message popped up, sent straight from Lu Chong himself. Legend Suze, I've long admired you. I know you own a water purifier and have endless purified water. Here's a deal. Give me 10 liters of clean water, and I'll reserve the best iron stove and 3 army coats from the blind box just for you. That's a steal, right? Suze let out a cold scoff reading the message. This con artist dared to target him? Instead of rejecting him outright, he feigned interest and replied, "Sounds intriguing, but I need proof first. How big is this blind box of yours? How heavy? Don't tell me it's just an empty shell." Thinking Suze had fallen for his scam, Lu Chang shot back a rapid reply. "Rest assured, Legend. The box is stuffed full of genuine goods. Funny thing though, it looks tiny, about the size of a microwave and super light. I can lift it with one hand, weighs barely 10 pounds at most." Suze burst out laughing at the response. This idiot couldn't even lie logically. He took a screenshot of their private chat, circled key phrases, the microwave-sized box, 10 pounds weight, over a dozen army coats, 3 large iron stoves, in bright red, then sent the screenshot straight to the district public chat, paired with a mocking retort. A blind box weighing 10 pounds holding 3 massive iron stoves and over a dozen army coats? Are those stoves paper cutouts, or are the coats just painted on? Anyone with an IQ under 50 shouldn't parade their stupidity in public. The second the screenshot and Suze's taunt went live, the channel, previously flooded with survivors trading supplies to Lu Chang, fell deathly silent. It took over 10 seconds for the cold fog survivors to snap out of their daze. Holy hell, he's right. 3 giant iron stoves can't weigh only 10 pounds. A microwave-sized box can barely fit 3 coats, let alone over a dozen. Scammer. Lu Chang, you rotten fraud. Give my black bread back. Damn your ancestors, Lu Chang. You'd swindle our life, saving rations at a time like this. Everyone report him together, ruin him. His lies brutally exposed, Lu Chang became public enemy number 1, cursed relentlessly by thousands across the district. Terrified, he shut down all private messages and didn't dare type. Sitting beside his warm fire pit, Suze watched Lu Chang's public humiliation unfold while tossing handfuls of green cabbage leaves and chunks of canned luncheon meat into an iron can. This frigid spell isn't nearly as tough as everyone makes it out to be. He bit down on blanched cabbage in utter comfort. On the second day of the frigid spell, the raging wind still howled like slashing blades. The entire Cloud Sea world had frozen into a massive ice cavern. Inside his spring-warm stone and timber fortress, Suze sat gnawing a ripe red tomato. In this 20 degrees Celsius hell, it was a luxury fit for gods. After finishing the tomato, Suze stood and stretched his stiff muscles. He glanced around, his brows furrowing slightly. Though the stone and timber fortress was impenetrable and superbly insulated, it took up 5 square meters of the original 20 square meter floating islet, leaving the space cramped. He still needed room for activities. The space is far too small to operate freely. Suze's gaze sharpened as he opened his virtual inventory. 30 floating island foundation stones glowed faint blue inside, resting quietly. Some he'd earned trading water and weapons earlier. Others he'd profited from selling defensive blueprints to desperate survivors. At a stage where most people hadn't even laid eyes on a single foundation stone, he'd hoarded 30 all to himself. It's time for a major expansion. Without hesitation, Suze opened the construction panel and selected Island Expansion. Detected 30 floating island foundation stones. Consume all to expand. Use all of them, Suze commanded firmly in his mind. The second the thought left his head, the 30 foundation stones transformed into 30 blazing blue light pillars that slammed straight into the dirt beneath his feet. Rumble. The entire floating islet shook with a deafening roar. The dirt lining the islet's edges churned and stretched outward with a life of its own. The wooden palisades and trenches hugging the perimeter were pushed further out by this mysterious force. Soil flipped, ice shattered, and the thunderous rumble lasted a full 3 minutes before fading away. Suze drew a deep breath, pushed open the fortress's heavy wooden door, and strode outside. His eyes lit up the instant he stepped out. It was enormous. The islet that had once spanned only 20 square meters had expanded all the way to 50, more than double its original size. 50 square meters might only be a tiny single room in the real world, but in this realm of precarious floating land masses dangling over an endless abyss, it was incredibly spacious. Perfect, Suze laughed aloud. He immediately set about rezoning the vast new area. The 5 square meter stone and timber fortress at the center would serve as the core living quarters, completely secure. A full 10 square meters on the left would become a large-scale future planting plot, its soil fully tilled loose. 5 square meters near the right edge would be a fishing zone. A wide empty stretch behind the fortress was reserved for stockpiling lumber, stone, and the half-ton of smokeless anthracite coal. Everything laid out in perfect order, satisfying even the most obsessive neat freak. After finishing all this manual labor, Suze felt no exhaustion, only renewed energy. He walked to the fishing zone, braving swirling ice shards, and picked up his tattered bamboo, fishing rod once more. So what if it's the frigid spell? I'll fish nonstop until my hands give out. Suze baited the hook and cast hard, the line sinking into the freezing cloud sea. Wind and snow lashed his face like whips. Even with his windbreaker on, he shivered violently. Yet he stood rigid as a statue, eyes locked on the float, a feral, wolf-like resolve burning in his gaze. In this world, slackness meant death. Time slipped by minute. For 3 full hours, the float tossed wildly in the gale without a single nibble. Just as Suze's fingers threatened to freeze solid, ready to head back to the fortress to warm up, the bamboo rod lurched downward violently. The pull was heavy, like a block of cast iron. Big catch. Suze jolted awake, planted a firm horse stance, and hauled back on the rod with all his strength. The fishing line stretched taut, emitting a dangerous high-pitched hum. Gritting his teeth, the muscles on his arms bulged. His boots scraped 2 pale tracks across the dirt. "Come up with me," he roared, driving power through his waist and leaning his entire weight backward. A deafening splash echoed. The frigid cloud sea split open, and a heavy black metal crate was dragged skyward, slamming hard onto the eyelet with a dull metallic thud. Gasping for breath, Suze rubbed his aching wrists and hurried forward. The crate had no lock, its surface caked in grime. He pried the latches open with his tactical dagger and lifted the lid. Staring at the contents inside, Suze froze before wild euphoria crashed over him. Acquired. Traditional Chinese cast iron cookware set ×1. Contains 1 large cast iron wok, 1 precision steel kitchen knife, 1 solid wooden cutting board, 1 cast iron spatula. Forged from premium raw iron, it conducts heat rapidly and is extremely sturdy and durable. Ha! Finally, I don't have to boil soup in this beat-up luncheon meat can anymore. Suze was overjoyed. In a world where basic survival was a struggle, owning a proper cookware set drastically boosted his quality of life. Before he could lift the wok, a voice echoed. Ding. Supplies detected. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations to host. Acquired traditional Chinese cast iron cookware set ×10. A flash of brilliant white light washed over the ground. 10 large black woks, 10 steel knives, 10 cutting boards, and 10 spatulas lined up neatly. Grinning like a villain staring at the hall of a chef's training camp, Suze hefted 1 giant wok and a full set of blades, turning to head back into the warm stone and timber fortress. Today, he'd cook a proper hearty meal to reward himself well. Stepping back inside, a wave of searing heat chased away the chill clinging to Suze's body. The premium smokeless anthracite blazed bright in the fire pit, casting warm orange light across the room. He stripped off his windbreaker and scrubbed the large cast iron wok spotless. The wok was heavy, solidly crafted, ideal for slow-cooking meat stews. He stacked fireproof stone bricks above the fire pit to build a makeshift stove, resting the cast iron wok securely on top. Time to make a hearty feast. He fetched cabbage, tomatoes, and luncheon meat. He set the solid wooden cutting board on the floor and grabbed the razor-sharp precision steel knife. Bang, bang, bang. His knife skills were clumsy at best, but the blade sliced through ingredients effortlessly. In a flash, everything was hacked and chopped into substantial pieces. Suze heated up his iron wok. Having no cooking oil, he dumped the luncheon meat dices straight into the pan. Sizzle. Torched by the high heat, rich grease oozed out of the luncheon meat in an instant, crackling across the bottom. A thick aroma filled the room. Suze swallowed hard and tossed the tomatoes into stir-fry. Sautéed in the hot rendered fat, the tomatoes quickly softened and released their juice, staining the wok's base an appetizing bright red. Next, he added the cabbage chunks and poured in most of a bottle of purified water. Bubble, bubble. He clapped the wooden lid on top. It was not long before the sound of boiling broth echoed from the iron wok. The rich fragrance of tomato cabbage stewed meat seeped out through the fortress's cracks, starkly out of place amid this freezing ice wasteland. Suze lifted the lid, gazing at the churning red broth and meat chunks, his appetite soaring. He picked up a chopstick, speared a piece of meat and tasted it, only to frown faintly. The ingredients are top tier, but there's no salt. The flavor's far too bland. For a food lover, the absence of seasonings was simply unbearable. Suze's eyes flicked, landing on the 9 spare kitchen sets sitting outside. He pulled open the trading zone interface at once. If I want to trade for seasonings, I've got to pull out all the stops. Suze lifted the steaming wok brimming with glistening red stew, positioned himself at the perfect angle, and snapped a high-definition screenshot with the camera function. The photo captured plump meat cubes, emerald cabbage, thick crimson broth, even wispy tendrils of rising steam in crystal clarity. He listed the photo alongside 9 cast-iron kitchen sets on the trading market. Seller, Suze. Trade item, Chinese cast-iron kitchenware set ×1 including iron wok, kitchen cleaver, chopping board, iron spatula. Wanted, salt, pepper, chili powder and seasonings, or special plant seeds. Stock remaining, 9. Note, craving a hot home-cooked meal? Tired of gnawing rock-hard black bread raw? Premium cast-iron cookware is yours for the taking. Only accepting seasonings and rare seeds. Anyone offering worthless junk gets blocked instantly. Attached photo is my freshly simmered tomato luncheon meat stew. The second this trade listing and its tantalizing food screenshot went live, the regional chat channel, previously filled with complaints about the bitter cold, erupted into total chaos. Holy hell, what am I seeing? Braised meat in an iron wok. This has to be a hallucination. He's insane. I'm huddled in a ramshackle wooden hut chewing black bread frozen solid enough to crack my teeth. And he posts this. Boss Suze, you're my savior. Just let me sip a drop of that broth. I'll trade every last piece of timber I own. This picture's definitely edited. There's no way fresh tomatoes exist in this hellhole. I don't believe it. I'm starving just looking at it. Trapped in this frigid death trap, most survivors clung to the brink of starvation, unable even to get their hands on hot water. Suze's snapshot of steaming stew shattered everyone's mental defenses, leaving countless people distraught and green with envy. His private message inbox flooded within seconds. Survivors offered salt, cumin, and mutated chili seeds in exchange for the cookware sets, desperate to survive the freezing cold. Suze chuckled as he watched the endless stream of blinking notifications in his backend. He quickly sorted through the private messages, blocking every person trying to lowball him with timber and stone, only keeping those bearing genuine goods. In less than 10 minutes, all sold out. A flurry of system light flashes filled Suze's inventory: 2 large sacks of refined salt, a bottle of black pepper, a jar of chili powder, and 2 packets of faintly glowing special seeds. Deal done. Suze grabbed salt and black pepper, sprinkling them straight in. One stir of the iron spatula transformed the already rich aroma into something irresistible. Salt drew out the deepest umami of the ingredients, while the sharp spice of pepper stoked his appetite to new heights. Ignoring the scalding heat, Suze gulped down broth and meat. Damn, this hits different. The sweet tang of tomatoes, fresh mildness of cabbage, and savory richness of luncheon meat exploded across his tongue. One mouthful of hot broth spread warmth through every pore of his body, drawing a fine layer of sweat across his forehead. Amid this hellish deep freeze, Suze sat inside his sturdy stone fortress, warming himself by the fire and feasting on wok-braised meat, living far more comfortably than he ever had back in the real world. By the third day, outdoor temperatures plummeted below -30 degrees. The gray-white sea of clouds froze solid. Howling winds whipped snowflakes sharp as ice shards, lashing every surface of the sky island relentlessly. The regional survivor count plummeted off a cliff once more, falling below 2,000. Those lacking adequate warm supplies froze silently in their sleep. For the survivors who clung on, a new lethal crisis emerged. Help! My wooden hut's splitting open, the winds blasting straight inside. Mine too. The extreme cold last night made the planks expand and contract until they split wide open. Does anyone have dirt? I need mud. I need dirt too. I'll trade 10 timber for 1 unit of dirt. Torn apart by brutal temperature swings, the shoddy ramshackle huts could not withstand the freeze, splitting open left and right. Frigid wind howled through the gaps, a death sentence for anyone trapped inside. Dirt, once cheap filler used only for island expansion and planting, instantly became an indispensable life-saving commodity in short supply. Just then, several arrogant usernames popped up in the regional chat. At their head stood Hongdana, a burly fat man with a cigar in his mouth. Listen up, everyone, quit your whining. Every last scrap of dirt on the market has been bought up by our Dirt Alliance. Hongdana spammed the channel smugly. If you want to live and patch your walls, come to me. 10 dirt for 1 black bread. Right after, the other members of the Dirt Alliance piled in to hype their scheme. Brother Hong's kind enough to share dirt to save your lives. If you think the price is too steep, freeze to death in your drafty huts. Dirt is the difference now. The chat erupted in furious backlash at their words. To hell with you, Hongdana. You bloodsucker. A single unit of dirt wouldn't even fetch one piece of timber before, and now you demand food and water? You might as well rob us blind. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Where am I supposed to get bread to trade for dirt? You're driving us straight to our graves. Hong Dana brushed off the torrent of insults without a care, growing even more brazen. Keep shouting. All the dirt is ours. This was blatant predatory monopolization, draining survivors dry for profit. Though boiling with rage, countless survivors stared at widening wall cracks and the biting wind seeping through. To stay alive, they gritted their teeth and traded their last precious rations for pitiful handfuls of mud. Suze sat beside his warm brazier, sneering at the scheming clowns parading around the chat. Dirt Alliance? Cornering the market? You lot really think you're big-shot capitalists. Suze opened his inventory and glanced at the mountain of dirt stacked in the corner. Between previous island expansions, trench digging, and tenfold critical hit resource gains, he held over 10,000 units of dirt. He had far more than he could ever use for farming. Hoarding it only wasted storage space. Today I'll teach you what a crash looks like. Without another word, Suze opened the trading zone and listed a full 3,000 units of dirt in one go. Seller, Suze. Trade item, ordinary dirt times 10. Wanted, timber times 1, or thatch times 1, or stone times 1. Stock remaining, 300. Note, all who need mud to patch walls and stay alive, come stock up at rock-bottom prices. That laughable Dirt Alliance means nothing to me. They're not even worth a passing thought. For 5 full seconds after the listing went live, the channel fell dead silent. Then the survivors erupted in wild celebration. Holy crap, Boss Suze's stepping in. 1 timber for 10 dirt units. This might as well be free. God Su is a legend. Long live Suze. I was just about to trade with Hong Dana. You saved me. Hurry and buy before stock runs out. Ha ha. Hong Dana, weren't you bragging about monopolizing dirt? Keep hoarding then. I'm grabbing dirt from God Su instead. The 3,000 units of dirt vanished without a trace in under a minute, snatched up by stampeding survivors. Suze's inventory swelled with 3,000 basic materials, while those desperate for wall patching mud secured their life-saving supplies. The so-called Dirt Alliance was utterly dumbfounded. They'd poured massive stocks of resources to buy out every private seller's dirt to seize the market, hoarding massive stockpiles of mud. Now Suze flooded the market at an absurdly low price, rendering their dirt worthless, hard enough to be useless even as toilet paper. They'd lost everything they'd invested. Seething with rage, Hong Dana sent Suze a private message brimming with unhinged fury. Suze, what's wrong with you? We could all turn a profit together. You've ruined the entire market with this stunt. Do you have any idea how many resources I've lost? Pull your trade listing right now, or I'll never let this go. Suze laughed out loud reading the impotent, raging message. He replied unhurriedly. Never let this go? Who do you think you are? I just hate your little racket and decided to crash your market. What are you going to do about it? Bite me? Idiot. Go huddle with your dirt and freeze through the winter. He sent the message, then blocked Hong Dana without hesitation, clean and decisive. The channel flooded with jeers aimed at the Dirt Alliance. Hong Dana and his crew became the laughingstock of the entire region, left staring blankly at their worthless dirt hordes in despair, too ashamed to type another word. Suze closed the interface and tossed another chunk of smokeless coal into the brazier. The deep freeze lasted a full week before finally drawing to an end. The raging winds died down, and temperatures slowly climbed. Though still frigid, the deadly cold capable of freezing people solid into ice sculptures faded away. Snow and ice covering the sky island melted, dripping as frigid water through the soil and plummeting into the sea of clouds far below. Suze pushed open the door of his stone and timber fortress and breathed in long, overdue fresh air. After this brutal week, the regional survivor count settled at 1,895. Out of an initial 10,000 players, less than 20% remained. The wasteland's cruelty knew no bounds. Those who survived have all built basic defenses and stockpiled supplies. The competition ahead will only grow fiercer. Suze's gaze turned cold and sharp as he strode toward the fishing zone. Now that the deep freeze had lifted, he needed to rush to replenish supplies. Above all, weapons. His only ranged armament was a tactical crossbow. Though it packed strong piercing power, its slow reloading speed was a fatal flaw. If swarmed by fast-moving monsters in large numbers, the crossbow's low rate of fire would spell disaster. Suze baited his hook and cast his line hard into the sea of clouds. As time passed, Suze noticed something strange. The fishing line on his bamboo rod kept sinking deeper and deeper. 10 meters, 20 meters, 28 meters. When the line hit 30 meters, an invisible resistance abruptly halted its descent. It was as if an unseen membrane stretched beneath the cloud sea, locking the hook in place, unable to sink even a single centimeter further. A cold system rule alert echoed inside his head right after. Warning, you are within the newcomer protection period. The maximum fishing depth of your starter rod is 30 meters. Crossing this boundary is forbidden. Notice, after surviving for a full month, your fishing rod will automatically upgrade, unlocking access to deep cloud sea fishing at 100 meters. Just as I suspected, a glint flashed across Suze's eyes. The intel from the drift bottle had been entirely accurate. 30 meters marked the absolute limit for new survivors. Yet this depth cap often hid the highest tier loot available within the 30-meter zone. Suze was about to reel a little line back when the float on the water let out a shrill whine and was violently dragged straight down into the cloud sea. Shit, something took the bait. Every muscle in Suze's body tensed instantly as he gripped the rod with all his strength. Boom. A terrifying pull surged upward from the 30-meter depth limit, powerful enough to overwhelm him.